You're holding a belief right now that is certainly false. You don't know which one. Perhaps it's something you learned in childhood and never questioned. Perhaps it's a conviction you'd defend passionately. Perhaps it's something so basic you've never consciously thought about it at all. But somewhere in your mind, nestled among the truths, sits a falsehood masquerading as knowledge. And if one belief can deceive you this completely, how many others have done the same? This isn't a comfortable realization. Most of us, when we glimpse this possibility, retreat immediately. We tell ourselves that while we might be wrong about minor things, we're surely right about what really matters. We trust our senses, our reason, our education. We assume that truth and falsehood are distinguishable if we're careful enough. René Descartes refused this comfort. In the early 17th century, this French philosopher asked a more dangerous question. What if you could doubt everything, every belief, every assumption, every supposed certainty, until you discovered what, if anything, cannot possibly be doubted? The discovery that emerged from this radical experiment would reshape human thought itself. From systematic doubt came the famous insight, Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Not merely a philosophical slogan, but the foundation of an entire worldview. Descartes would construct from this single certainty a complete system, proofs of God's existence, the fundamental distinction between mind and matter, a mechanical understanding of nature, and a vision of human reason capable of achieving absolute certainty about reality itself. This wasn't philosophy as academic exercise. Descartes lived through Europe's religious wars, witnessed the collapse of medieval certainties, and absorbed the best learning of his age only to recognize its foundations were unstable. The intellectual framework that had guided civilization for centuries was crumbling. In response, he proposed something unprecedented: to rebuild all human knowledge from the ground up, accepting nothing on authority, trusting nothing that could possibly be false, and discovering whether genuine certainty was even possible. The method he developed, methodical doubt applied with surgical precision, would become the defining approach of modern philosophy. The questions he raised about consciousness and its relationship to the physical world remain central to neuroscience and philosophy of mind today. The confidence in reason's power to unlock nature's secrets, the mathematical approach to understanding reality, the sharp distinction between subjective experience and objective truth. These Cartesian innovations created the intellectual foundations of the modern world. What makes Descartes' philosophy enduringly vital isn't merely its historical influence. It's that the crisis he confronted, how to distinguish truth from error when all sources of knowledge seem unreliable, remains every thinking person's crisis. Every time you question what you've been taught, every time you recognize the limits of your senses or the fallibility of your reasoning, every time you wonder whether genuine certainty is possible, you're retracing the path Descartes mapped. The difference is that he followed doubt to its ultimate conclusion and discovered something extraordinary, that the very process of doubting reveals a truth no skepticism can destroy. Part 1. The Architecture of Doubt. Some years ago, one was struck by the large number of falsehoods that one had accepted as true in my childhood, and by the highly doubtful nature of the whole edifice that one had subsequently based on them. Descartes wrote these words not as an academic exercise but as testimony to a genuine intellectual crisis that would reshape the entire landscape of human knowledge. The comfortable certainties that had guided previous generations lay in ruins around him, and with them, the very possibility of distinguishing truth from error seemed to vanish. The crisis ran deeper than any particular false belief. Everything Descartes had learned from his tutors at La Flèche, Everything the scholastic tradition had carefully constructed over centuries, everything that common sense and sensory experience had taught him since birth, all of it stood under suspicion. Not because any single element was obviously wrong, but because the foundations themselves proved unreliable. When you discover that the ground beneath your house is unstable, you don't merely rearrange the furniture. You question whether the entire structure can stand. Traditional authorities offered no escape from this predicament because they contradicted each other at every turn. Scholastic philosophy provided elaborate systems of thought, but these systems rested on assumptions that could not themselves be proven. Religious doctrine promised certainty through faith, but reason and observation frequently challenged its claims about the natural world. Sensory experience seemed most reliable of all, yet dreams regularly presented impossible events as perfectly real, and optical illusions revealed how easily the senses could be deceived. Each source of knowledge undermined the others, leaving Descartes intellectually homeless in a world where truth and falsehood seemed impossible to distinguish. The depth of this crisis becomes clear when we realize what it meant for someone of Descartes' intellectual ambition. He had mastered the best learning of his age, studied under the most respected teachers, absorbed the wisdom of centuries, only to discover that none of it provided a reliable foundation for genuine knowledge. The very criteria he might use to evaluate competing claims were themselves questionable. How can you judge which authority to trust when you have no independent standard for judgment? How can you distinguish truth from error when the methods for making such distinctions are precisely what stands in doubt? This wasn't skepticism for its own sake, but recognition of an unavoidable logical problem. If uncertain foundations produce uncertain conclusions, then building elaborate systems of thought on questionable premises only multiplies uncertainty rather than resolving it. The scholastics had constructed magnificent intellectual cathedrals, but if the cornerstone was crooked, the entire edifice would eventually collapse under its own weight. Patching and reinforcing wouldn't suffice. The whole structure needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. Descartes understood that genuine knowledge required something previous philosophers had never achieved: absolute certainty about at least one fundamental truth. If you want to have solid foundations, he wrote, you must dig down deep and throw out all the sand and mud until you reach rock or clay. Half measures wouldn't work. You cannot achieve certainty by choosing the most probable among competing authorities, or by accepting beliefs that are merely likely to be true. Probability isn't certainty, and likelihood isn't knowledge. The revolutionary insight that emerged from this crisis would transform destructive skepticism into constructive method. Instead of using doubt to destroy the possibility of knowledge, Descartes would employ it systematically to discover what cannot be destroyed, thereby revealing truths that no previous philosopher had uncovered. Doubt, traditionally knowledge's greatest enemy, would become its most powerful ally. This methodical doubt wouldn't proceed randomly, but would follow a precise strategy designed to test every possible source of belief. By subjecting all his opinions to the most extreme skeptical challenges he could devise, Descartes would discover whether anything could survive such rigorous examination. Whatever remained standing after this intellectual demolition would provide the unshakable foundation that centuries of philosophy had failed to establish. Descartes understood that genuine knowledge required a foundation absolutely immune to doubt. His method wasn't casual skepticism but surgical precision, systematically eliminating every belief that could possibly be false until only the indubitable remained. This revolutionary approach unfolded in carefully orchestrated stages, each more radical than the last. The first assault targets our most basic source of knowledge, sensory experience. From childhood, we trust our senses to reveal the world's true nature. Yet Descartes demonstrates their systematic unreliability through concrete examples that shatter this confidence. The tower appearing round from a distance reveals itself square when approached. The straight stick bends when placed in water. Objects shrink as they recede into the distance. These aren't occasional errors, but revelations of the sense's fundamental limitations. Whatever one have up till now accepted as most true one have acquired either from the senses or through the senses. Descartes observes in the first meditation, "But from time to time one have found that the senses deceive, and it is prudent never entirely to trust something which has deceived us even once. This prudence isn't excessive caution but philosophical necessity. If our senses mislead us sometimes, how can we distinguish reliable from unreliable sensory information? The very possibility of sensory deception undermines all sensory knowledge. This first stage eliminates our knowledge of the external world's properties, colors, sounds, textures, distances. Yet surely some truths remain beyond sensory doubt. Mathematical relationships seem immune to perceptual error. Whether one dreaming or awake, 2 plus 3 equals 5. Geometric principles hold regardless of sensory confusion. These rational truths appear to occupy safer ground. Descartes' second stage shatters this refuge. Perhaps our reasoning faculties themselves are fundamentally unreliable. When we calculate that 2 plus 3 equals 5, when we recognize that squares have 4 sides, maybe we're systematically mistaken. This doubt transcends occasional computational errors to question whether our rational faculties might be structurally defective. If we can err in reasoning, how do we know we're not erring in our most basic logical operations? This stage proves more unsettling than sensory doubt. We can imagine living without reliable sensory information, but we cannot conceive of thinking without trusting our basic rational capacities. Yet Descartes pushes relentlessly forward. If absolute certainty is the goal, even our clearest reasoning must withstand skeptical scrutiny. Mathematical and logical truths, seemingly the most secure knowledge we possess, dissolve under this methodical pressure. The third stage introduces the ultimate skeptical hypothesis: systematic deception by an omnipotent deceiver. One will suppose, therefore, that not God, who is supremely good and the source of truth, but rather some evil demon of the utmost power and cunning has employed all his energies in order to deceive me, Descartes declares. This malicious genius could manipulate our every experience and thought, making false beliefs seem perfectly true. This hypothesis transcends previous doubts by making every belief potentially false, not just beliefs about sensory qualities or mathematical relationships, but any belief that could conceivably be mistaken. The evil demon could make us believe in an external world that doesn't exist, in mathematical truths that are actually false, in memories that never happened. Under this scenario, our entire belief system becomes a carefully constructed illusion. The methodical nature of this progression reveals Descartes' philosophical genius. Each stage eliminates broader categories of belief with increasing radicality. First, sensory beliefs about the external world's qualities. Then, rational beliefs about mathematical and logical relationships. Finally, any belief that could possibly be false under conditions of systematic deception. This isn't arbitrary skepticism, but strategic elimination, clearing away all possibly uncertain beliefs to expose what, if anything, remains absolutely certain. The stages build toward a crucial recognition. If anything can survive this systematic doubt, it must be absolutely indubitable. The evil demon hypothesis creates the most extreme skeptical scenario conceivable, making every ordinary belief potentially false. Yet this very extremity serves Descartes' constructive purpose. Whatever emerges from doubt's most thorough application will provide the unshakable foundation for genuine knowledge. The systematic progression through doubt's stages prepares the ground for discovering something that cannot possibly be doubted. Methodical doubt reaches its most dramatic moment not through further skeptical extension, but through the startling recognition of what remains absolutely certain, even under the most extreme skeptical pressure. After systematically dismantling every possible source of knowledge, the senses, mathematics, logic itself, one truth emerges with unshakable clarity: the existence of the thinking self. Descartes captures this pivotal discovery in the second meditation. But one have convinced myself that there is absolutely nothing in the world, no sky, no earth, no minds, no bodies. Does it now follow that one too do not exist? No. If one convinced myself of something, then one certainly existed. This realization arrives not as a complex logical argument requiring premises and inference, but as an immediate insight available to anyone who seriously attempts systematic doubt. The logical structure here reveals something extraordinary about the nature of self-knowledge. To doubt one's own existence while engaged in the act of doubting creates an immediate contradiction. Doubt requires a doubter. Thinking demands a thinker. Even if the evil demon deceives me about absolutely everything else in existence, he cannot deceive me about my existence as a thinking being, because the very deception itself requires that one exist to be deceived. The attempt to doubt my existence actually confirms it rather than undermining it. This creates a unique philosophical situation where skeptical pressure, instead of destroying certainty, actually produces it. Consider the remarkable nature of this discovery. The process of methodical doubt, which seemed bent on destroying all knowledge, reveals the most fundamental knowledge of all. The cogito emerges not despite doubt but because of it. Doubt provides both the method for discovering this truth and the very content that makes it undeniable. Descartes expresses his excitement at this breakthrough. This proposition, one am, one exist, is necessarily true whenever it is put forward by me or conceived in my mind. This isn't merely another belief that happens to survive skeptical scrutiny. It possesses a completely different logical status from any other knowledge claim. The cogito establishes both the first principle of philosophy and something equally important, a criterion for identifying genuine knowledge. The absolute certainty of one think, therefore one am, derives from its perfect clarity and distinctness. We perceive with complete intellectual transparency that thinking requires a thinker. This clarity and distinctness becomes the standard by which all other knowledge claims must be measured. Whatever possesses the same pellucid self-evidence as the cogito must also be certain. This criterion transforms the entire philosophical enterprise. Rather than accepting traditional authorities or common sense, Descartes now possesses a reliable method for distinguishing genuine knowledge from mere opinion. The mind that has discovered its own existence through the rigorous application of doubt has also discovered the conditions under which genuine knowledge becomes possible. Clear and distinct perception emerges as both the hallmark of the cogito's certainty and the general principle for reconstructing all human knowledge on secure foundations. The discovery reveals doubt's ultimate limit. Whilst we can doubt the existence of the external world, mathematical truths, even logical principles, we cannot coherently doubt the existence of ourselves as thinking beings. This limit isn't a failure of doubt, but its greatest triumph. The method designed to eliminate false beliefs has uncovered the one belief that cannot possibly be false. From this unshakable foundation, the systematic reconstruction of knowledge can begin, guided by the criterion of clarity and distinctness that the Cogito itself exemplifies. Part 2. The Cogito and the Nature of Mind. The most famous 3 words in philosophy, cogito ergo sum, one think, therefore one am, emerged not from abstract speculation, but from the depths of radical doubt. When Descartes stripped away every belief that could possibly be false, when he imagined an evil demon deceiving him about mathematics, physics, even the existence of his own body, one truth remained unshakable. In the very act of doubting everything, he discovered something that doubt itself could not touch. This wasn't a clever logical trick or a sophisticated argument requiring premises and conclusions. The Cogito represents something far more immediate and powerful, a direct, intuitive certainty available to anyone willing to reflect seriously on their own thinking. As Descartes wrote in the Discourse on Method, one think, therefore one am, was so certain and of such evidence that no ground of doubt, however extravagant, could be alleged by the skeptics capable of shaking it. The insight doesn't require philosophical training or complex reasoning. It emerges naturally from the simple recognition that in order to doubt, one must exist as a thinking being. Try it yourself. Attempt to doubt your own existence. The moment you engage in this mental exercise, you encounter the peculiar logical structure that makes the Cogito unique among all truth claims. The very attempt to doubt your existence confirms what you're trying to deny. You cannot think yourself out of existence because the thinking itself proves you exist. This isn't a matter of logical deduction, but of immediate recognition. What makes this certainty so revolutionary is its immunity to even the most extreme skeptical pressure. Mathematical truths, which seem as certain as anything could be, crumble before Descartes' evil demon hypothesis. Perhaps 2 plus 3 doesn't really equal 5. Perhaps an all-powerful deceiver manipulates your mind every time you perform calculations. But the Cogito remains untouchable even under this ultimate skeptical assault. If you're being deceived, you must exist to be deceived. If your thoughts are illusions, you must exist to have illusory thoughts. The evil demon, rather than undermining the Cogito, actually reinforces it by requiring a thinking subject to deceive. This unique, logical structure, where the attempt to deny the proposition confirms its truth, applies to no other knowledge claim. Every other belief, no matter how certain it seems, can be coherently doubted without logical contradiction. But doubting your existence as a thinking being creates a performative contradiction. You must exist as a thinker in order to entertain the doubt. Descartes recognized this as providing the first principle of the philosophy one was seeking. Not just another true belief, but a new kind of philosophical certainty that emerges from doubt itself, rather than despite doubt. The Cogito thus becomes what Descartes called his Archimedean point, referencing the ancient mathematician's famous declaration, "Give me a place to stand, and one will move the earth." Archimedes understood that with a fixed point and a long enough lever, even the massive earth could be moved. Similarly, Descartes found his place to stand in the certainty of his own existence as a thinking being. From this single, unshakable foundation, he could begin the systematic reconstruction of human knowledge on secure grounds. This might seem like a remarkably slender foundation for rebuilding an entire worldview. After all, what can you really know from the bare fact that you exist as a thinking being? But Descartes recognized that this minimal certainty actually contains within itself the resources for much more. The cogito doesn't just establish that you exist, it reveals what kind of thing you essentially are. You know yourself most certainly not as a physical body, which could be an illusion, but as a thinking substance, a mind whose essence is thought itself. The insight transcends any particular verbal formulation. Sometimes Descartes wrote, Cogito ergo sum. Sometimes, one am, one exist. Sometimes he reflected on the certainty without any formula at all. In the Meditations, he emphasizes the immediate recognition. One am, one exist. That is certain. The specific words matter less than the direct recognition they point toward. Whether expressed as a conditional statement, a simple declaration, or an immediate intuition, the essential insight remains constant, the absolute certainty of one's existence as a thinking being. This certainty about the thinking self opens profound questions about the nature of mind and its relationship to everything else that exists. If you know yourself most certainly as a thinking thing, what does this reveal about the fundamental structure of reality? How does this thinking substance relate to the physical world that doubt has rendered uncertain? The cogito, rather than ending philosophical inquiry, launches it in an entirely new direction. From the secure foundation of self-knowledge toward the reconstruction of knowledge about God, the external world, and the proper relationship between mind and matter. The cogito reveals something extraordinary about the nature of mind itself. When Descartes declares one think, therefore one am, he isn't merely establishing that some thinking occurs. He's uncovering what he essentially is, a thinking thing, a res cogitans, whose entire nature consists in thought. This isn't an accidental property or temporary activity. Thinking constitutes the very essence of the self that survives the most radical doubt. Descartes defines this discovery with remarkable precision. One am a thing that thinks. That is, a thing that doubts, affirms, denies, understands a few things, is ignorant of many things, is willing, is unwilling, and also which imagines and has sensory perceptions. This catalogue reveals the extraordinary richness contained within the simple insight: every mental activity, reasoning, willing, feeling, imagining, even doubting itself, represents a mode or modification of this fundamental thinking substance. The cogito discloses a profound asymmetry that illuminates the distinct nature of mind and body. One can systematically doubt the existence of my hands, my brain, my entire physical form, yet this very process of doubting confirms the existence of my mind. The doubt that threatens to dissolve my body simultaneously establishes my mental reality. This isn't merely a logical trick. It reveals something fundamental about their respective natures. If mind and body were identical, or if mind depended essentially upon body for its existence, then doubting the reality of body would necessarily undermine the reality of mind. But the opposite occurs. The more thoroughly one doubt my physical existence, the more certainly one establish my mental existence. Descartes recognizes the profound implication. One knew that one was a substance whose whole essence or nature is simply to think, and which does not require any place or depend on any material thing in order to exist. This logical independence points towards substantial distinction. Mind emerges as a substance complete in itself, requiring no physical substrate for its reality. The thinking self stands revealed as fundamentally different from extended physical reality, not merely in degree, but in essential nature. Within this thinking substance, consciousness displays a remarkable internal structure. Ideas function as mental representations, presenting objects to the mind, whether these objects exist externally or not. Volitions express the mind's capacity for choice and decision. Emotions manifest as conscious feelings that color mental experience. Sensations provide conscious awareness of apparent bodily states. Judgments represent the mind's power to affirm or deny, to assent or withhold belief. Each of these mental phenomena, despite their apparent diversity, shares the fundamental characteristic of being modifications of thinking substance. Whether one contemplating mathematical truths, feeling joy, willing an action, or experiencing pain, all these activities belong to the same essential nature. They are ways of thinking, modes through which consciousness expresses itself. This analysis reveals consciousness as far more than simple awareness. It possesses internal complexity, structure, and dynamic activity. The mind doesn't merely receive impressions passively. It actively judges, wills, imagines, and organizes its contents according to its own rational principles. The Cogito establishes another crucial insight: the immediacy and transparency of mental states. One know my own thoughts more directly and certainly than one know anything else, including my own body. There is nothing that gives me a surer knowledge than the perception of my own mind. Descartes observes. This creates a unique epistemic situation. Whilst one might be mistaken about the external causes of my thoughts, perhaps no physical world exists to produce my sensations, one cannot be mistaken about having the thoughts themselves. When one experiences pain, one might be wrong about having a physical body that's damaged, but one cannot be wrong about the conscious experience of pain occurring. When one sees red, the external object might not exist, but the mental event of seeing red indubitably occurs. This transparency of consciousness to itself provides the foundation for certain knowledge, yet simultaneously creates a new philosophical problem. If one know my mind most directly and certainly, how can one move beyond this inner certainty to establish knowledge of anything external to consciousness? The very success of the Cogito in securing mental reality seems to trap knowledge within the boundaries of thought itself. The thinking self emerges from Descartes' analysis as both the solution to skeptical doubt and the source of new philosophical challenges. By discovering what survives universal doubt, he establishes the foundation for rebuilding knowledge. Yet this foundation, pure thinking substance, known with perfect immediacy, seems to exist in isolation from the physical world it seeks to know. The Cogito establishes an unshakable foundation, yet it simultaneously creates philosophy's most perplexing prison. Having discovered absolute certainty in the existence of mind, Descartes confronts an epistemological predicament that will define centuries of philosophical inquiry. How can we move beyond the fortress of consciousness to knowledge of anything else that exists? The very method that delivered certainty now threatens to trap us within the boundaries of our own thinking. One am certain that one am a thinking thing, Descartes declares. But this triumph of rational discovery carries an unexpected burden. Do one not therefore also know what is required for my being certain about anything? The question reveals the challenge lurking beneath the Cogito's success. We have found one indubitable truth, but the criteria that delivered this certainty seem to apply only to the immediate contents of consciousness itself. Everything else, the physical world, other minds, even our own bodies, the problem crystallizes around a crucial distinction that transforms how we understand the relationship between mind and world. Consider any idea present in consciousness: the idea of the sun, of this room, of another person. Each idea possesses a dual nature that creates the fundamental epistemological puzzle. As a mode of thought, as a mental content occurring in consciousness, every idea is known with complete certainty. One cannot doubt that one am now thinking of the sun, regardless of whether the sun exists. But the same idea, considered as representing something outside my mind, as corresponding to an external object, remains entirely doubtful under the method's rigorous scrutiny. This distinction between ideas as mental contents and ideas as representations reveals the depth of our predicament. My ideas of earth, sky, colors, sounds, and other people are certainly present in my consciousness. Their existence as thoughts is indubitable. Yet whether they correspond to anything real outside my mind becomes the central question that the Cogito cannot answer. The method of doubt has taught us that even our most vivid and compelling experiences might be systematic delusions. Dreams can feel completely real while we dream them. Hallucinations can possess overwhelming vividness. The evil demon could be feeding us a perfectly coherent but entirely false representation of reality. The problem deepens when we recognize that we cannot simply trust our most reasonable or compelling ideas. One have noticed that the senses are sometimes deceptive, Descartes observes, and it is a mark of prudence never to place our complete trust in anything that has deceived us, even once. But the issue extends beyond sensory deception. Our reasoning itself might be systematically corrupted. The mathematical truths that seem most certain, the logical principles that appear most evident, even the clarity and distinctness that characterize the cogito, all remain vulnerable to the possibility of a deceiving demon who has structured our cognitive faculties to generate false certainty. This creates what philosophers call the problem of the criterion. We need a reliable way to distinguish true ideas from false ones, but we cannot establish this criterion without falling into circular reasoning. We cannot trust clear and distinct perceptions because they might be systematically deceptive. Any criterion we propose must itself be validated. But by what standard? The regress threatens to be infinite, leaving us trapped in solipsistic uncertainty. The predicament reveals itself most starkly when we consider the external world that seems so obviously real. The chair one appear to sit in, the room that seems to surround me, the physical body one take to be mine, all of these remain, strictly speaking, mere ideas in consciousness. Their vividness does not guarantee their correspondence to external reality. Their coherence does not prove their truth. Even their apparent independence from my will, the fact that one cannot simply think the chair away, might be explained by the systematic nature of the deception, rather than by genuine external existence. Descartes recognizes that escaping this epistemological prison requires more than methodical analysis of our ideas. It demands a bridge from subjective certainty to objective knowledge, from the indubitable contents of consciousness to the reality they purport to represent. The solution lies not in abandoning the rigorous standards that created the problem, but in discovering a guarantee that our clearest rational insights correspond to the structure of reality itself. This guarantee can only come from beyond the circle of human consciousness. Only a perfect, non-deceiving God could ensure that the rational principles governing clear and distinct thinking actually correspond to the rational structure of reality. The certainty of all other things depends on this alone, that God exists, Descartes will argue. Without divine validation of our cognitive faculties, we remain forever uncertain whether our most compelling ideas represent truth or elaborate delusion. The problem of the external world thus transforms the question of God's existence from a matter of religious faith to an epistemological necessity. Part 3. The idea of God and perfect being. Within the landscape of consciousness, amongst all the varied contents of thought, one idea stands apart with remarkable distinctness. It is the idea of God, not as a vague religious sentiment or cultural inheritance, but as a precise philosophical concept with determinate content. Descartes defines this idea with striking clarity. By the name God, one understand a substance which is infinite, eternal, immutable, independent, all-knowing, all-powerful, and by which one myself, and every other thing that exists, if any such there be, were created. This idea presents itself in consciousness not as an empty abstraction, but as a rich, complex representation of perfect being, omnipotent, omniscient, eternal, possessing all perfections without limit or qualification. What makes this idea philosophically extraordinary becomes apparent when we compare it to every other idea in consciousness. We can readily understand how most of our ideas arise from experience or imagination. The idea of a mountain comes from seeing mountains. The idea of a golden mountain emerges by combining our separate ideas of gold and mountain. Even fantastical ideas like winged horses result from joining familiar elements in new combinations. Our minds excel at this constructive work, taking finite materials from experience and recombining them into novel forms. But the idea of infinity operates according to entirely different principles. We cannot construct genuine infinity by adding finite quantities, no matter how large or numerous. 1,000,000 is not closer to infinity than 10. Both remain equally finite. We cannot reach infinity by multiplication, extension, or any operation performed on finite materials. The idea of infinite perfection represents something qualitatively distinct from anything finite experience could provide. Descartes recognizes this crucial point. One must not think that, just as my conceptions of rest and darkness are arrived at by negating movement and light, so my perception of the infinite is arrived at not by means of a true idea, but merely by negating the finite. The idea of infinity is not the mere absence of limits, but the positive conception of unlimited reality. This recognition introduces a fundamental principle that will prove philosophically decisive. Ideas must have causes adequate to their representational content. As Descartes establishes, it is manifest by the natural light that there must be at least as much reality in the efficient and total cause as in the effect of that cause. This principle applies with particular force to ideas considered as representations. Whilst the idea itself, as a mere mode of thought, requires only the finite reality of a thinking mind, what the idea represents may demand a cause possessing far greater reality. The idea of infinite perfection represents unlimited reality, absolute knowledge, perfect power, and complete independence. If this representation is to have an adequate cause, that cause must possess at least as much reality as the idea represents. No finite being could serve as such a cause, for finite beings lack the very perfections the idea contains. A being that doubts cannot be the source of the idea of absolute knowledge. A being that desires cannot originate the idea of complete satisfaction. A being that changes cannot generate the idea of immutable perfection. This creates a profound philosophical puzzle. One find within my consciousness an idea whose content exceeds anything my finite nature could produce. Every aspect of my existence reveals limitation. One doubt, revealing ignorance. One desire, revealing lack. One depend on external things, revealing imperfection. Yet one possess an idea that represents the complete absence of all such limitations. The idea of God represents not merely the negation of my imperfections, but the positive reality of unlimited perfection. The puzzle deepens when we recognize that this idea cannot be constructed from finite experience through any imaginable process. Unlike other complex ideas that result from combining simpler elements, the idea of infinite perfection appears to be simple and irreducible. We cannot build it up from parts, because infinity admits no parts. We cannot derive it from experience, because experience provides only finite materials. The idea seems to arrive in consciousness complete and determinate. carrying within itself the mark of a reality that transcends the finite realm entirely. This philosophical situation demands explanation. If one cannot be the source of this idea, and it cannot be constructed from the materials of finite experience, its presence in consciousness points beyond the boundaries of the finite mind toward a reality adequate to serve as its cause. Descartes constructs what may be his most ingenious proof for God's existence through an analysis of causation and the content of ideas themselves. The argument proceeds with mathematical precision. 1. Discover within my consciousness an idea of God as infinitely perfect. This idea, like all ideas, requires an adequate cause, since the cause must contain at least as much reality as the effect it produces. Only God himself could serve as the cause of an idea representing infinite perfection. Therefore, God must exist as the source of this idea within me. The formal structure reveals Descartes' philosophical elegance. He writes in the third meditation, "The idea of God, or a supremely perfect being, is certainly one which one find within me just as surely as the idea of any shape or number. And my understanding that it belongs to his nature that he always exists is no less clear and distinct than is the case when one prove of any shape or number that some property belongs to its nature." This passage demonstrates how Descartes treats the idea of God not as wishful thinking or cultural construction, but as a datum of consciousness requiring explanation. The argument moves from the undeniable presence of an idea to a necessary conclusion about external reality. The brilliance emerges when Descartes examines why this particular idea cannot be self-generated fiction. Since one am finite and imperfect, one fundamentally lack the causal power to produce an idea representing infinite perfection. This differs crucially from ideas of finite things, which one might construct through imagination or combination of sensory elements. A centaur combines horse and human. A golden mountain merges gold with mountain. But infinite perfection cannot be assembled from finite parts, no matter how cleverly arranged. Descartes anticipates the objection that we form the God idea through negation by simply removing limitations from finite concepts. He responds decisively. One must not think that one do not perceive the infinite by means of a true idea, but only by the negation of the finite, just as one perceive rest and darkness by the negation of movement and light. The infinite is not merely the finite with limitations removed. It possesses positive content that one genuinely apprehend, despite my own finitude. This positive content of infinite perfection cannot be generated by a being who has experienced nothing but limitation and imperfection. Sensory construction fares no better as an explanation. All sensory experience presents finite, limited, imperfect objects. Even the most impressive phenomena, vast oceans, towering mountains, brilliant lights, remain essentially bounded and cannot serve as building blocks for genuine infinity. No combination of sensory elements, however creative, could yield the idea of unlimited perfection. Descartes systematically eliminates each possible finite source, showing that neither sensation, imagination, nor rational construction from finite elements can account for this idea's presence in consciousness. The argument's final movement establishes why self-creation remains impossible. If one possessed the power to create myself, one would have bestowed upon myself all perfections, since creating a perfect being requires no more power than creating an imperfect one when you command the fundamental force of existence itself. Descartes states this with characteristic clarity. If one had derived my existence from myself, then one should neither doubt nor want, nor lack anything at all, for one should have given myself all the perfections of which one have any idea. My very existence as a limited, Doubting, imperfect being therefore proves that one cannot be self-caused. One must depend on something else for my existence. Something possessing the power to create beings capable of conceiving infinite perfection. This creator must himself possess infinite perfection, since he has transmitted to me the capacity for this idea. The causal argument thus moves from the analysis of a single idea to the necessary existence of God as both my creator and the source of my most profound conceptual capacity. Descartes' ontological argument emerges not as mere logical exercise, but as the culmination of his methodical search for certainty. Where Anselm had argued that God must exist because existence is greater than non-existence, Descartes presents something more fundamental. Existence belongs to God's essence, just as having three angles belongs to a triangle's essence. This is not about proving that God exists, but about recognizing that we cannot coherently conceive of God as non-existent. The fifth meditation reveals this insight through careful analysis of what we mean when we think of God. One cannot think of God except as existing, Descartes declares. The comparison illuminates the logical structure. Mountains and valleys are correlative concepts, each requiring the other for coherent meaning. Similarly, when we properly understand what we mean by God, a supremely perfect being, we discover that existence is included in that very concept, not added to it from outside. This argument works through conceptual analysis rather than causal reasoning. Descartes asks us to examine the content of our idea of God with the same precision we apply to mathematical concepts. When we think of a triangle, we recognize immediately that having three angles is not an optional property, but part of what makes it a triangle. The necessity here is conceptual. We cannot coherently conceive of a triangle lacking three angles. Descartes argues that existence relates to God in precisely this way, but with even greater necessity. The crucial distinction emerges between existence as perfection versus existence as mere factual property. For finite beings, existence is something that happens to be true or false about them, a contingent fact about the world. We can coherently conceive of any finite thing as either existing or not existing without contradiction. But for an infinitely perfect being, existence functions differently. It is not merely a property that God might or might not possess, but part of what constitutes divine perfection itself. Lacking existence would be an imperfection, and since God is defined as having all perfections, God cannot lack existence. This is not circular reasoning, but recognition of what infinite perfection entails. Just as we cannot conceive of a triangle without three angles, we cannot conceive of a supremely perfect being without existence. But the necessity is even stronger in God's case because existence is itself a perfection, not merely a structural requirement. The apparent objection arises immediately. Surely we can conceive of many things, perfect islands, unicorns, ideal societies, without their existing. Why should God's case be different? Descartes' answer reveals the unique character of divine existence. Only in the concept of God is existence included as part of the essence, rather than as an additional property. Finite things, no matter how perfect in their kind, remain essentially contingent. They could exist or not exist without contradiction because their perfection is limited to particular domains. A perfect island might possess every excellence an island could have, but it remains fundamentally contingent. Its existence or non-existence involves no logical contradiction. The island's perfection is relative and finite, but God's perfection is absolute and infinite, encompassing all possible perfections, including existence itself. Existence can no more be separated from the essence of God, Descartes writes, than the fact that its three angles equal two right angles can be separated from the essence of a triangle. This establishes that necessary existence belongs uniquely to the concept of absolutely perfect being. No finite concept, however exalted, can make this claim because finite perfection always admits of degrees and limitations. Only infinite perfection necessarily includes existence as an essential rather than accidental property. The integration of Descartes' causal and ontological arguments reveals their mutual reinforcement as proofs of the same fundamental truth. The causal argument demonstrated that something with infinite perfection must exist to cause our idea of God. We cannot be the source of an idea whose content exceeds our own reality. The ontological argument approaches the same conclusion through formal analysis of essence, showing that infinite perfection necessarily includes existence. Both arguments converge on the same truth through different routes. One, through efficient causation, the other, through conceptual necessity. Together, they complete the proof of God's existence and prepare the foundation for solving the deepest problem of the Meditations: how to move from subjective certainty to objective knowledge. Divine perfection will guarantee the reliability of human reason itself, transforming methodical doubt into systematic knowledge of reality. Part 4. Divine Guarantee and the Validation of Reason. The divine guarantee emerges from God's very nature. Descartes establishes that a perfect being cannot be a deceiver because deception itself implies imperfection. To deceive requires either malice, the desire to harm others, or limitation, the inability to achieve one's goals through truth alone. A perfect being possesses neither flaw. As Descartes declares in the fourth meditation, "It is impossible that God should deceive me, for in every case of trickery or deception some imperfection is to be found. And although the ability to deceive appears to be an indication of cleverness or power, the will to deceive is undoubtedly evidence of malice or weakness." This connection between divine perfection and truthfulness proves crucial. God's veracity flows necessarily from divine nature rather than representing an arbitrary choice. A perfect being must be truthful because falsehood contradicts perfection itself. The divine essence excludes deception as surely as it excludes any other limitation or flaw. With God's existence and perfection established, the evil demon hypothesis collapses entirely. Descartes had introduced this malevolent deceiver as the ultimate skeptical challenge. A being possessing both the power and will to systematically mislead us about everything, including our most basic, rational insights. But divine perfection eliminates this possibility completely. God has no motive to deceive us, being perfectly good. The same rational faculty that led us to certain knowledge of God's existence can therefore be trusted in its other clear and distinct perceptions. The divine guarantee operates with precise boundaries. God's perfection doesn't eliminate all human error, but does ensure that our clearest rational insights correspond to reality. Descartes carefully distinguishes between systematic deception about what we perceive most clearly and God's permission of occasional mistakes. We can still err in hasty judgments, fall victim to sensory illusions, or make mistakes in complex reasoning. But what we perceive with perfect clarity and distinctness must be true. Everything which one perceives very clearly and very distinctly is true, Descartes maintains, because divine perfection guarantees the reliability of our most careful rational insights. This distinction proves essential to understanding the scope of divine guarantee. God's veracity doesn't validate every belief or impression, but specifically underwrites our most rigorous rational perceptions. When we perceive something with the same clarity and distinctness that characterizes our knowledge of our own existence or of God's nature, we can be certain of its truth. Divine perfection ensures that reality itself possesses rational structure and that our rational faculties, when properly employed, provide access to truth rather than elaborate self-deception. The establishment of divine veracity solves the fundamental epistemological problem that methodical doubt revealed. We needed some guarantee that our clearest thinking corresponds to reality rather than representing sophisticated illusion. Without such assurance, even our most careful reasoning might lead us deeper into error rather than toward truth. Divine guarantee provides this assurance by grounding rational confidence in the very structure of reality itself. God's perfect nature ensures that the world operates according to rational principles and that minds capable of clear and distinct perception can grasp these principles reliably. This doesn't make human reason infallible, but establishes that systematic deception about our clearest insights is impossible. The divine guarantee transforms rational inquiry from a potentially futile exercise into a reliable method for discovering truth about reality's fundamental structure. Descartes' epistemological project faces what appears to be a devastating objection, one that threatens to collapse his entire system of certain knowledge into circular reasoning. The problem emerges when we examine the relationship between divine guarantee and rational certainty in Cartesian philosophy. Critics observe that Descartes seems to require God's existence to guarantee the reliability of clear and distinct perceptions, yet he employed those very same clear and distinct perceptions to prove God's existence in the first place. Antoine Arnauld articulated this objection with particular precision. The only remaining difficulty is how the author can avoid reasoning in a circle when he says that we are sure that what we clearly and distinctly perceive is true only because God exists, but that we can be sure that God exists only because we clearly and distinctly perceive this. The force of this criticism cannot be understated. If valid, it reveals that the entire Cartesian edifice rests upon circular reasoning, making it impossible to establish genuine certainty about anything beyond the cogito itself. The apparent circle operates thus. To trust our rational faculty generally, we need divine guarantee that a non-deceiving God ensures the reliability of clear and distinct perception. Yet to establish God's existence, we must employ that very rational faculty whose reliability remains in question. We seem trapped in an epistemological circle where the foundation depends upon what it purports to support, and what it supports is necessary to establish the foundation. Descartes' resolution hinges on a crucial distinction that critics often overlook: the difference between what we clearly perceive while actively attending to it versus our memory of having clearly perceived it. Present clear and distinct perceptions carry their own immediate certainty and require no external guarantee. When one attend directly to the cogito ergo sum, its truth compels my assent through its own self-evidence. When one follow the ontological argument step by step, attending carefully to each stage, the conclusion emerges with immediate, rational necessity. The divine guarantee operates differently. It validates not the immediate certainty of present clear and distinct perceptions, but rather our trust in the general reliability of our rational faculty, particularly when we rely on memory of past insights. As Descartes explains, when one said that we can know nothing with certainty until we are aware that God exists, one expressly declared that one was speaking only of knowledge of those conclusions which can be recalled when we are no longer attending to the arguments by means of which we deduced them. This distinction dissolves the apparent circularity. The cogito and the proofs of God's existence function as simultaneously known truths that establish themselves through direct rational insight rather than dependence on external guarantee. When one attend to my own existence as a thinking thing, this truth manifests with immediate self-evidence. When one carefully examine the ontological argument or the causal proof of God's existence, these demonstrations compel assent through their own clarity and distinctness, not through appeal to divine authority. These foundational insights, friends, my existence as a thinking being and God's existence as perfect being, establish themselves independently of any circular dependence. They represent what we might call the bedrock of Cartesian epistemology, truths that compel our assent through their own rational necessity when we attend to them directly. God's role becomes clear once we understand this temporal dimension of certainty. Divine guarantee enables us to build systematic knowledge by trusting our rational faculty, even when we're not currently attending to particular proofs or insights. Without this guarantee, we could never move beyond the immediate present moment of clear perception. We could never build upon previous discoveries or construct complex arguments that require multiple steps of reasoning. The divine guarantee validates reason as a reliable faculty for discovering truth, not by making individual clear perceptions true, but by ensuring that what appears clearly and distinctly to our rational attention genuinely corresponds to reality. As Descartes puts it, the certainty of all other things depends on this alone, that God exists, so much so that without this knowledge, it is impossible ever to know anything perfectly. This resolution completes the validation of human reason and prepares us to apply this now guaranteed rational faculty to understanding the nature of material substance and the external world. We possess not merely isolated moments of certainty, but a reliable cognitive instrument capable of systematic inquiry into the structure of reality itself. The philosophical journey through radical doubt has achieved something extraordinary. What began as the systematic destruction of every belief has culminated in the most secure foundation for knowledge that philosophy has ever discovered. With God's existence established through the ontological argument, we witness a complete transformation in our relationship to reason itself. The very faculty that seemed most threatened by the evil demon hypothesis now stands validated by divine guarantee. Descartes expresses this newfound confidence with remarkable clarity. One now seemed to be able to lay down as a general rule that whatever one perceives very clearly and distinctly is true. This represents far more than a return to our original beliefs. The skeptical crisis has not simply been resolved. It has been transcended. Where we once trusted our senses and accepted inherited opinions without examination, we now possess a criterion of truth grounded in the nature of reality itself. Clear and distinct perception, validated by God's perfection, provides access to truth more certain than any previous philosophy achieved. This validation extends most powerfully to mathematical and logical reasoning. The truths of geometry and arithmetic, which appeared most certain before the skeptical crisis began, are now restored to certainty on even firmer foundations. Since God is perfect and created both our minds and the external world, our clearest rational insights must correspond to how things actually are. Mathematical truth reflects the structure of reality rather than mere mental construction. When we perceive that the angles of a triangle equal 2 right angles, or that 2 plus 3 equals 5, we are not simply manipulating symbols according to arbitrary rules. We are discovering features of reality itself as God created it. This harmony between reason and reality makes possible the mathematical approach to natural philosophy that will revolutionize human understanding of the physical world. The same divine guarantee that validates our clearest perceptions ensures that mathematical analysis can reveal the essential nature of material things. Where medieval philosophy often treated mathematics as inferior to metaphysical speculation, Descartes establishes mathematical reasoning as the most reliable path to knowledge about the created world. The foundation is now laid for investigating the nature of material substance and the external world with systematic confidence. Having established the reliability of clear and distinct perception, we can proceed to analyze what we clearly and distinctly perceive about material things. This analysis will reveal truths hidden from sensory observation but accessible to rational insight. Descartes expresses this methodological confidence. One must examine whether material things exist, and indeed one at least know that they are capable of existing, insofar as they are the subject matter of pure mathematics, since one perceived them clearly and distinctly. The transformation from methodical doubt to methodical reconstruction represents the completion of a philosophical revolution. The same systematic approach that eliminated uncertain beliefs now enables systematic building of certain knowledge. Each element of the reconstructed worldview will be grounded in clear and distinct perception, validated by divine guarantee. Physics, medicine, and ethics will all rest on the same metaphysical foundations, creating a unified system of knowledge, unprecedented in its scope and certainty. This methodical reconstruction will reveal how rational analysis, rather than sensory observation, discloses the essential nature of material reality. The investigation of material substance through clear and distinct perception will complete the systematic restoration of human knowledge about reality, but now on foundations that no skeptical argument can undermine. Part 5. The nature of material substance. We naturally assume that our senses reveal the true nature of physical objects. When we encounter a piece of wax fresh from the honeycomb, its apparent qualities seem to tell us precisely what it is. Descartes presents this familiar example with careful attention to sensory detail. It has been taken quite recently from the hive. It has not yet lost the taste of the honey. It retains some of the scent of the flowers from which it was gathered. Its color, shape, and size are plain to see. It is hard, cold, and can be handled without difficulty. These sensory properties appear to constitute the wax's very essence, defining what makes it the particular material thing it is. This confidence in sensory knowledge represents our most basic relationship with the material world. We trust that hardness, fragrance, color, and texture reveal genuine features of objects themselves. The wax seems to announce its nature through these immediate qualities, creating what appears to be direct contact between mind and matter through sensation. Yet Descartes demonstrates how this natural assumption dissolves under careful scrutiny. When the wax approaches fire, every single sensible property undergoes complete transformation. The hard becomes soft, the fragrant becomes odorless, the cold becomes hot, the determinate shape melts into fluid formlessness, the pale yellow shifts to transparent liquid, the crisp sound, when struck, disappears entirely. But even as one speak, one put the wax by the fire, and look, the residual taste is eliminated, the smell goes away, the color changes, the shape is lost, the size increases, it becomes liquid and hot. You can hardly touch it, and if you strike it, it no longer makes a sound. But does the same wax remain? This transformation creates a profound philosophical puzzle. Despite the complete alteration of every sensory quality, we unhesitatingly judge this liquid substance to be the same piece of wax. Our recognition transcends the total change in apparent properties, suggesting that material identity depends upon something other than what the senses reveal. The wax's persistence through radical sensory transformation indicates that its essential nature lies beyond the reach of sensation entirely. The implications prove revolutionary for our understanding of material substance. If every sensory quality can change whilst the wax remains identical to itself, then these qualities cannot constitute material essence. Hardness, color, temperature, taste, smell, and sound emerge as merely accidental properties rather than essential features. What we took to be the wax's defining characteristics proved to be superficial modifications that leave its fundamental nature untouched. This discovery eliminates the entire sensory foundation of our knowledge about matter. It must be admitted that the nature of this wax is in no way revealed by my imagination, but is perceived by the mind. Alone is less than hash. 5 hash is greater than the senses. Rather than providing insight into material essence, present only changing appearances that obscure the underlying reality. Material knowledge requires intellectual rather than sensory investigation. What then constitutes material essence if not sensory qualities? Descartes identifies extension as the sole property that cannot be removed from our concept of material substance without destroying the concept entirely. Let me focus on what was in the wax from the beginning, what was common to the honeycomb wax and the melted wax. Surely it is nothing except that it was something extended, flexible, and changeable. Extension. The capacity to occupy space through length, breadth, and depth remains constant through every possible transformation the wax might undergo. This insight transforms our understanding of the physical world fundamentally. Matter proves to be essentially mathematical rather than sensible, defined by geometric properties rather than sensory qualities. The true nature of material substance lies in spatial relationships, measurable dimensions, and mechanical interactions, rather than in colors, tastes, or textures. Physical science becomes a branch of geometry, investigating the mathematical structure of extended substance rather than cataloging sensory appearances. The wax argument thus reveals extension as the essence of material substance, establishing the foundation for a mechanistic understanding of nature where mathematics, rather than sensation, provides the key to physical reality. The nature of material substance reveals itself through a single, defining characteristic that distinguishes matter from mind and from nothingness itself. Extension in length, breadth, and depth constitutes not merely one property, among others, that material things happen to possess, but rather the fundamental attribute from which all other material properties derive their meaning and reality. This insight transforms our entire understanding of what makes matter genuinely material. Descartes establishes this revolutionary principle with crystalline clarity in his Principles of Philosophy. The nature of matter, or body, considered in general, consists not in its being a thing that is hard or heavy or colored, or which affects the senses in any way, but simply in its being a thing that is extended in length, breadth, and depth. This statement dismantles centuries of philosophical confusion about the essential nature of material substance. Hardness, weight, color, texture, temperature, all these qualities that seem so obviously material prove to be secondary, contingent features that depend entirely upon the underlying reality of spatial extension. Every material thing, regardless of whether it appears solid or liquid, hot or cold, rough or smooth, must possess spatial dimensions to count as material at all. Without extension, there simply is no material substance to speak of. This geometric understanding of material substance reveals the physical world as fundamentally mathematical in its deepest structure. Is less than #0. 5 hash is greater than. If material substance is essentially extension, then every physical phenomenon becomes, at its core, a problem in applied geometry. The motion of planets transforms from mysterious celestial influences into precise questions of spatial relationships changing over time according to mathematical laws. The behavior of fluids becomes geometric analysis of extended volumes responding to forces that can be calculated with mathematical precision. Even biological processes resolve into mechanical arrangements of extended parts, each operating according to geometrical principles that govern all extended substance. This mathematical nature of physical reality enables something unprecedented in natural philosophy: complete description of natural phenomena through geometric relationships alone. Where previous approaches relied upon qualitative observations that remained fundamentally imprecise, the geometric understanding of matter makes possible exact mathematical description of natural processes. The swirling of water, the fall of stones, the growth of plants, all become amenable to the same mathematical analysis that governs pure geometry, because all are fundamentally arrangements and motions of extended substance. This geometric foundation demands the complete rejection of substantial forms, occult qualities, and the entire apparatus of Aristotelian natural philosophy that had dominated medieval thought. Instead of explaining natural phenomena through mysterious inherent purposes or hidden sympathies between distant objects, everything becomes explicable through the spatial arrangements and motions of extended substance alone. The concept of natural places, where objects supposedly belong, dissolves into mathematical analysis of forces acting upon extended bodies. Substantial forms that allegedly determine the essential nature of different kinds of things give way to geometric descriptions of how extended substance arranges itself into different configurations. Occult sympathies that supposedly explained action at a distance become unnecessary when all physical interaction reduces to the contact and motion of extended parts. Descartes articulates this methodological transformation with remarkable directness. One openly acknowledged that one recognized no matter in corporeal things apart from that which the geometers call quantity and take as the object of their demonstrations. This statement eliminates entire categories of explanation that natural philosophers had relied upon for centuries. No longer need we invoke mysterious qualities or hidden purposes to explain why things behave as they do. The geometric properties of extended substance, its size, shape, position, and motion, provide complete explanatory resources for understanding all material phenomena. This approach makes natural philosophy both more intellectually satisfying and more practically powerful than any previous method. Intellectually satisfying because it eliminates the multiplication of mysterious entities and occult explanations that characterized medieval natural philosophy. Every natural phenomenon becomes explicable through the same clear, geometric principles that govern mathematical demonstration. Practically powerful because mathematical description enables precise prediction and control of natural processes in ways that qualitative approaches never could achieve. The revolutionary implication emerges with stunning clarity. Physics becomes a branch of mathematics rather than a separate domain of knowledge, requiring fundamentally different methods of investigation. This mathematization of nature enables unprecedented precision in understanding and predicting natural phenomena. Where ancient and medieval natural philosophers could offer only rough, qualitative descriptions of natural processes, the geometric understanding of material substance makes possible exact mathematical laws that govern all physical change. Descartes establishes a revolutionary principle that transforms our entire understanding of the natural world. If material substance is essentially extension, then every physical phenomenon must be explicable through extended substance in motion. No mysterious forces, no hidden purposes, no occult qualities. Everything reduces to matter, moving according to mathematical laws. This creates a completely unified approach to natural philosophy, where every event, from the motion of planets to the beating of animal hearts, follows identical mechanical principles. Give me extension and motion, and one will construct the universe, Descartes declares in The World. This bold proclamation reveals the scope of his mechanical vision. The arbitrary distinctions that plagued earlier natural philosophy simply vanish. Terrestrial and celestial phenomena operate by the same principles. Living and non-living matter follow identical laws. Natural and artificial processes become variations on the same geometric theme. A falling stone, a growing plant, and a beating heart all exemplify extended substance in motion, differing only in complexity, not in fundamental nature. This mechanical approach transforms our understanding of natural phenomena entirely. Nature operates like a vast, infinitely complex machine, where every event results from prior material causes according to mathematical laws, just as gear movements determine other gear movements in clockwork. The analogy runs deeper than metaphor. It captures the essential structure of physical reality itself. Every natural phenomenon becomes both intelligible and predictable because mechanical operations follow rational principles accessible to mathematical analysis. Consider how this mechanical model revolutionizes our understanding of biological processes. The animal heart becomes a pump, circulating blood through hydraulic pressure. The lungs become bellows, moving air through mechanical expansion and contraction. Nerves become hydraulic tubes, transmitting motion through animal spirits, flowing like liquid through pipes. Even complex animal behaviors reduce to mechanical responses to environmental stimuli. Elaborate clockwork, responding to external pressures and internal configurations. This mechanical framework makes nature completely transparent to mathematical analysis. Where previous natural philosophers encountered mysterious sympathies, hidden virtues, and inexplicable attractions, Descartes finds only matter in motion following geometric principles. The lodestone attracts iron not through occult sympathy but through invisible particles creating mechanical pressure. Fire burns not through elemental nature but through rapid motion of tiny corpuscles. Even light propagates not through mysterious emanation but through pressure transmitted instantaneously through subtle matter filling all space. Yet this cosmic machine requires a divine engineer. God functions as the maintainer of this mechanical universe, conserving the total quantity of motion according to immutable laws. God is the primary cause of motion, and he always preserves an equal quantity of it in the universe. Descartes explains. Divine action becomes the source of natural regularity rather than arbitrary intervention. God maintains the same total quantity of motion according to unchanging principles, ensuring that natural laws express divine constancy rather than mere human conventions or temporary regularities. This divine conservation explains why nature operates predictably. The same causes always produce the same effects, because God maintains consistent mechanical principles throughout creation. Natural laws reflect divine immutability. God's unchanging nature guarantees that mechanical operations remain constant across time and space. This transforms natural philosophy from uncertain speculation about hidden essences into certain knowledge about mathematical relationships governing extended substance in motion. Revolutionary implications unfold from this mechanical philosophy. Animals become complex machines without rational souls, their apparent intelligence reducible to elaborate mechanical responses. The human body becomes a sophisticated machine united to a rational soul, with all bodily functions explicable through hydraulic and mechanical principles. All natural phenomena become mathematical problems, awaiting mechanical solution through careful analysis of extended substance in motion. This mechanical worldview promises to make humans masters and possessors of nature through understanding its mechanical operations. Once we comprehend the mathematical principles governing material substance, we can predict natural phenomena, control natural processes, and create artificial machines that surpass natural efficiency. The mechanical philosophy enables technological advances impossible under previous approaches to nature because it reveals the rational structure underlying apparent natural complexity. This mechanical understanding of material substance prepares us to examine how rational analysis, rather than sensory observation, reveals the true nature of material things. The mechanical philosophy shows that extended substance in motion constitutes physical reality. But how do we gain certain knowledge of this mechanical structure through reason alone? Descartes presents us with a piece of wax, fresh from the honeycomb. It carries the fragrance of flowers, tastes of honey, produces a particular sound when struck, displays a definite color and shape, feels hard and cold to the touch. Every sense confirms what seems obvious. We know this material thing through direct sensory contact. Yet when Descartes places the wax near fire, everything the senses reported vanishes. The fragrance disappears, the taste is lost, the sound changes, the color alters, the shape transforms, the texture becomes soft and warm. What was in the wax that was so distinctly grasped? Certainly none of the features which one arrived at by means of the senses, for whatever came under taste, smell, sight, touch, or hearing has now altered, yet the wax remains. This simple observation reveals something profound about material knowledge. We assumed sensation provided direct access to material reality, but sensation only grasps fleeting accidents, not essential substance. The wax that remains through all these changes cannot be identified with any particular sensory quality, since every such quality proves changeable. What persists is something deeper, extended substance capable of infinite modifications in size, shape, and configuration. Yet here imagination encounters its fundamental limitation. We might try to picture the wax's various possible forms, now hard, now soft, now round, now square, but imagination works by constructing mental images of particular configurations. The wax, however, can take unlimited different forms as it melts, hardens, expands, contracts, and changes shape. When one imagines the wax, one understands that it is capable of countless changes of this kind, yet one am unable to run through this immeasurable number of changes in my imagination. Imagination constructs finite images. Intellectual understanding grasps infinite possibility. Only intellect can comprehend the unlimited mutability that extension allows. The wax's essential nature, its capacity for infinite spatial and temporal modifications, transcends any particular image imagination might construct. This reveals why genuine knowledge of material things requires moving beyond sensory appearance to intellectual analysis of essential properties. The wax argument exposes something even more fundamental about how we know material objects. We think we simply see the wax, but seeing involves complex intellectual judgment. What we call perception actually requires mind to interpret, organize, and analyze sensory data according to rational concepts. The perception one have of it is a case not of vision or touch or imagination, nor has it ever been, despite previous appearances, but of purely mental scrutiny. We don't passively receive information about material objects. We actively judge that what appears to our senses counts as wax based on intellectual analysis that goes far beyond immediate sensory data. This transforms our understanding of material knowledge entirely. Instead of mind passively receiving impressions from external objects, mind actively analyzes and interprets experience according to rational principles. Sensation provides raw data, but knowledge emerges through intellectual judgment, guided by mathematical concepts of extension, figure, and motion. The wax's true nature, extended, flexible, changeable substance, can only be grasped through mathematical analysis, not sensory observation. This makes possible the mathematical natural philosophy that will unlock nature's secrets by treating material things as geometric objects governed by mechanical laws rather than collections of sensory qualities. We've now established the complete difference between mental and material substance. Mind is unextended, indivisible, thinking substance known through immediate self-awareness. Matter is extended, divisible, non-thinking substance known through mathematical analysis of spatial properties. Yet this creates the profound problem that will dominate the remainder of Cartesian philosophy. How does immaterial mind interact with material body in human beings? We experience ourselves as unified beings, yet we've discovered we are composed of two completely different kinds of substance with no apparent point of contact. Part 6. The Union of Mind and Body. The methodical analysis has revealed something remarkable about the nature of reality itself. Through systematic doubt and clear reasoning, we have discovered not one type of being, but two fundamentally different kinds of substance that constitute the fabric of existence. These are res cogitans, thinking substance, and res extensa, extended substance. They represent completely different categories of being, with nothing whatsoever in common between them. Descartes expresses this discovery with characteristic precision in the sixth meditation. On the one hand, one have a clear and distinct idea of myself, insofar as one am simply a thinking, non-extended thing, and on the other hand, one have a distinct idea of body, insofar as this is simply an extended, non-thinking thing. This is not merely a conceptual distinction we impose upon reality for convenience. It represents the actual structure of existence itself. Two genuinely different types of substance that exhaust all possible being. Mind, whose essence is thought, lacks any spatial dimension. It cannot be measured, divided, or located in space. When you grasp a mathematical truth or experience doubt, that mental event has no length, width, or height. It exists, but not in the way physical objects exist. Body, whose essence is extension, lacks any trace of consciousness. A stone has shape, size, and position, but no awareness of these properties. It exists in space, but has no inner life, no subjective experience, no thoughts about its own existence. The opposition between these substances runs deeper than mere difference. Their essential properties are complete negations of each other. Where mind is unextended, body is extended. Where mind is indivisible, body is divisible. Where mind knows itself immediately through consciousness, body is known only through intellectual analysis of its geometric properties. Every fundamental characteristic of thinking substance stands in direct contradiction to the corresponding characteristic of extended substance. This creates two entirely different modes of being that appear to share no common ground. Mind is simple and unified. You cannot divide a thought into spatial parts or separate consciousness from itself. Body is complex and composite. Every physical thing can be divided into smaller parts, analyzed into constituent elements, broken down geometrically. Mind is immediately present to itself in the very act of thinking. Body reveals itself only through careful measurement and mathematical analysis of its spatial properties. The active nature of mind contrasts absolutely with the passive nature of body. In thinking, the mind acts. It judges, doubts, affirms, denies, imagines, wills. These are genuine activities that originate from the thinking substance itself. In motion, body remains purely passive. It moves only when acted upon by external forces, following mechanical laws without any self-direction or spontaneous activity. This substantial distinction carries profound logical implications. Each substance could exist without the other, proving their complete independence. Descartes reasons with compelling clarity. Everything that one clearly and distinctly understands is capable of being created by God so as to correspond exactly with my understanding of it. Hence, the fact that one can clearly and distinctly understand one thing apart from another is enough to make me certain that the two things are distinct. The logical independence follows necessarily from the clarity and distinctness with which we conceive each substance. We can conceive mind without any reference to bodily extension. Pure thought requires no spatial dimension. We can equally conceive body without any reference to consciousness. Geometric extension requires no mental awareness. This mutual conceptual independence proves their real distinction as separate substances, not merely different aspects of some underlying unity. Substance dualism solves several crucial philosophical problems. It explains why self-knowledge possesses absolute certainty, whilst knowledge of the external world remains uncertain. Mind knows itself immediately and infallibly because consciousness is transparent to itself. It explains why mathematics applies so perfectly to the physical world. Body is essentially geometric, making mathematical analysis the proper method for understanding material reality. It secures the possibility of personal immortality by establishing mind as a substance independent of bodily corruption. Yet this solution creates a profound new challenge that becomes the defining puzzle for all subsequent philosophy. If mind and body are really distinct substances with completely opposite natures, how can they interact causally? How can mental events produce bodily movements? How can physical events generate conscious experiences? The very success of dualism in establishing the complete distinction between substances makes their apparent interaction deeply mysterious. When you decide to raise your hand and your hand rises, a mental event seems to cause a physical event. When light strikes your eye and you see color, a physical event seems to cause a mental event. Yet how can thinking substance, which lacks all spatial properties, act upon extended substance, which lacks all mental properties? The union of mind and body presents Descartes with his most formidable philosophical challenge. Having established mind as unextended thinking substance and body as extended material substance, he faces an apparently impossible puzzle. How can these fundamentally different substances interact causally? The problem strikes at the heart of human experience, for we seem constantly to witness mind influencing body and body influencing mind, yet the metaphysical framework that so elegantly separates these substances appears to make such interaction inconceivable. The difficulty emerges from the very nature of causation itself. In the physical world, causation operates through spatial relationships. Bodies move other bodies through contact, pressure, impact, or other forms of mechanical interaction. A billiard ball moves another ball by striking it. A hand lifts a cup by exerting physical force upon it. The heart pumps blood through muscular contractions that create pressure. All physical causation appears to require some form of spatial relationship between cause and effect, some mechanism by which one extended thing can influence another extended thing through the laws that govern matter in motion. But mind, as Descartes has established, possesses no spatial properties whatsoever. It has no location, no size, no shape, no capacity for the mechanical interactions that seem to define all physical causation. How then can an unextended, non-spatial mind move an extended, spatial body? How can something with no physical properties whatsoever push, pull, or otherwise influence processes that operate according to purely mechanical laws? Is less than #0, 5 is greater than. The immaterial appears fundamentally incapable of moving the material, yet our most basic experiences seem to demonstrate precisely such interaction countless times each day. Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia posed this challenge to Descartes with devastating clarity. How can the soul of man being only a thinking substance, determine the bodily spirits to produce voluntary actions? Her question exposes the fundamental contradiction. If mind truly lacks all physical properties, it cannot possibly engage in the spatial interactions that physical causation requires. The very qualities that make mind distinct from body, its non-spatial, non-mechanical nature, seem to render it completely powerless to influence bodily processes. Descartes recognized the severity of this problem and attempted a solution that would locate mind-body interaction at a specific physical site. He proposed the pineal gland, a small organ situated at the center of the brain, as the seat where soul and body unite. This choice was not arbitrary. The pineal gland possessed unique characteristics that made it seem ideally suited for this crucial function. Unlike other brain structures that exist in pairs, the pineal gland is singular and unified, matching the unity of the soul itself. Its central location places it at the convergence of the brain's various pathways, positioning it to coordinate the body's diverse functions under the soul's direction. The part of the body in which the soul exercises its functions immediately is in no wise the heart, nor the whole of the brain, but merely the most inward of all its parts, to wit, a certain very small gland which is situated in the middle of its substance. Descartes explains, in the passions of the soul. This tiny gland becomes the interface between mental and material substance, the point where thoughts become movements and sensations become ideas. Through subtle movements of this gland, the soul could direct the flow of animal spirits. The fine material substances that Descartes believed carried neural impulses throughout the body, whilst remaining itself immaterial and unextended. Yet this proposed solution reveals its own profound inadequacies upon closer examination. The pineal gland, however unique its properties, remains fundamentally a physical organ subject to the same mechanical laws that govern all extended substance. If the soul truly lacks spatial properties, it cannot move the pineal gland any more than it can move any other physical structure. The problem of interaction has merely been relocated, not resolved. We still face the fundamental question: how can the non-spatial influence the spatial, regardless of which particular spatial structure serves as the alleged point of contact? Moreover, the pineal gland solution reduces the soul's interaction with the body to a purely mechanical process, contradicting the very nature of mental substance that Descartes has so carefully established. If the soul moves the pineal gland through mechanical force, then it must possess the spatial and material properties necessary for such force. But this would make it extended substance, not thinking substance. If it moves the gland through some non-mechanical means, then we have introduced a form of causation entirely unlike anything else in the physical world, creating an inexplicable exception to the mechanical laws that govern all other bodily processes. The deeper Descartes explores this problem, the more he recognizes that the mind-body union cannot be understood through the clear and distinct ideas that work so effectively for comprehending mind alone or body alone. The interaction between mental and material substance represents what he calls a primitive notion, a fundamental concept that must be grasped through experience rather than analysis, felt rather than deduced. Hunger gnaws at the stomach whilst simultaneously occupying consciousness with urgent demands. This simple experience reveals something profound about human nature that pure intellectual analysis cannot capture. When Descartes examined these bodily sensations in his sixth meditation, he discovered they provide practical wisdom about our composite nature, despite their confused character as mixed thoughts, combining mental and physical elements. These sensations differ fundamentally from both pure thoughts like mathematical ideas and pure bodily states like mechanical processes. They are genuinely psychosomatic phenomena, revealing the intimate connection between consciousness and physical processes. Nature also teaches me, by these sensations of pain, hunger, thirst, and so on, that one am not merely present in my body, as a sailor is present in a ship, but that one am very closely joined and, as it were, intermingled with it, so that one and the body form a unit. This passage captures Descartes' recognition that embodied experience provides evidence for genuine mind-body union that his substance dualism struggled to explain theoretically. The sailor analogy illuminates the contrast. A sailor observes the ship's condition from outside, making inferences about damage or mechanical problems. But hunger doesn't present itself as external information about bodily fuel levels. It manifests as lived urgency, demanding immediate attention. This reveals a crucial distinction in how the mind relates to its own body versus external objects. With my own body, one experiences intimate union, creating composite human nature, while with external objects, one maintains purely intellectual analysis. Pain isn't merely information about tissue damage processed by a detached observer. It constitutes lived experience, motivating immediate action. When one touches a hot surface, withdrawal occurs before conscious deliberation, demonstrating knowledge that bypasses inferential reasoning entirely. This creates a unique epistemic situation where embodied experience provides understanding unavailable through pure intellect. Consider how this intimate knowledge differs from observing other bodies. One have immediate, non-inferential awareness of my own fatigue, comfort, or tension, whilst one must infer similar states in others through external observation of their behavior and expressions. This asymmetry reveals that embodied experience constitutes a distinct source of knowledge, neither reducible to mechanical analysis nor explicable through pure rational reflection. These embodied lessons teach what mechanical analysis cannot, the reality of psychosomatic unity, where mental and physical causation interpenetrate in ways that pure substance dualism struggles to capture. Emotions like fear simultaneously produce mental experiences, thoughts of danger, memories of past threats, and bodily changes, including rapid heartbeat, muscle tension, and altered breathing patterns. Conversely, bodily states like illness generate both physical symptoms and mental effects, such as depression, confusion, or irritability. This bidirectional causation challenges any simple separation between mental and physical realms. Descartes recognized this complexity in his analysis of the passions. They are caused, maintained, and strengthened by some movement of the spirits. The animal spirits, subtle material particles mediating between soul and body, carry influences in both directions. Fear begins with a mental recognition of danger, but immediately triggers bodily preparations for fight or flight. Meanwhile, bodily conditions like fatigue or hunger shape mental states, affecting concentration, mood, and decision-making capacity. Human experience reveals causal patterns crossing the mind-body boundary continuously. This presents the irreducibility of human nature to either pure thought or pure mechanism. We are genuinely composite beings, requiring both intellectual and experiential understanding. Humans cannot be fully grasped as pure minds accidentally connected to bodies. This would make bodily experience merely incidental rather than constitutive of human nature. Neither can we be understood as complex machines that happen to have consciousness. This would reduce mental life to mechanical processes, eliminating genuine agency and rational capacity. The composite nature explains both human dignity through rational capacity and human vulnerability through bodily dependence. Our rational abilities elevate us above purely mechanical existence, enabling mathematical knowledge, moral reasoning, and scientific understanding. Yet our embodied condition makes us dependent on material conditions, subject to illness, aging. This duality creates the distinctive character of human existence, neither angelic nor merely animal. This recognition prepares us to understand how the passions and emotions represent composite nature most clearly. Unlike pure thoughts that belong entirely to the mind, or mechanical processes that belong entirely to the body, emotions emerge from the intersection of mental and physical processes. They reveal how human beings exist as unified wholes rather than accidentally connected substances, pointing toward Descartes' analysis of emotional life and its ethical implications for living well as embodied, rational creatures. Part 7. The Passions and Human Nature. Human beings experience phenomena that resist easy classification within Descartes' dualistic framework. When we feel love, fear, anger, or joy, something occurs that cannot be understood as purely mental, like mathematical reasoning, nor as merely physical, like digestion. These passions represent a third category of experience, arising from what Descartes calls the substantial union of mind and body. They constitute the clearest evidence that human beings are not simply minds temporarily housed in bodies, but genuine composites where mental and physical aspects form an integrated whole. Descartes defines these experiences precisely in the passions of the soul. The passions of the soul are perceptions, feelings, or emotions of the soul, which we relate particularly to it, and which are caused, maintained, and strengthened by some movement of the spirits. This definition reveals the hybrid nature of emotional experience. Passions are mental phenomena, experienced consciously by the soul, yet they originate from physical processes in the body. They represent neither pure thought nor mere mechanical motion. The mechanism underlying this phenomenon involves what Descartes calls animal spirits, the most subtle form of matter that flows through the nervous system. These spirits create direct connections between bodily events and mental experiences. When we encounter something threatening, physical changes in our nervous system immediately produce the conscious experience of fear, complete with its characteristic feelings of alarm and urgency. Conversely, mental states can directly influence physical processes. Our conscious evaluation of a situation can intensify or diminish the flow of animal spirits, thereby modifying our emotional response. This psychosomatic system explains both the involuntary nature of emotional responses and the possibility of their rational regulation. We cannot simply decide not to feel fear when confronted with danger, because the passion arises automatically from our embodied nature, responding to environmental conditions. Yet we can learn to evaluate situations more accurately and thereby modify our emotional responses over time. The system represents neither arbitrary feeling nor mere mechanical response, but meaningful expressions of the mind-body composite engaging with its world. Descartes approaches emotions with scientific precision, identifying 6 fundamental passions from which all others derive: wonder, love, hatred, desire, joy, and sadness. Each represents a basic way the soul responds to objects it encounters. Wonder, he explains, is a sudden surprise of the soul, which brings it to consider with attention the objects that seem to it unusual and extraordinary. This passion opens us to learning by focusing attention on what we have not previously encountered or understood. Love draws us toward objects we judge beneficial to ourselves, whilst hatred repels us from what we perceive as harmful. Desire motivates us toward what we lack but believe would benefit us. Joy confirms our possession of what is good for us, whilst sadness signals that we have lost or lack something valuable. These 6 fundamental responses can combine and modify to produce the entire spectrum of human emotional experience. Complex emotions like jealousy emerge from combinations of love, hatred, and sadness. Pride involves joy mixed with love of oneself. Remorse combines sadness with hatred directed toward our own past actions. This systematic analysis reveals that emotions are not arbitrary or meaningless, but serve essential functions in human life. Each passion disposes the soul toward appropriate responses to environmental conditions. Love motivates us to preserve and pursue what benefits our mind-body composite. Hatred protects us from what would damage us. Wonder ensures we remain open to learning about unfamiliar aspects of our world. The passions constitute part of our natural equipment for navigating existence successfully as embodied rational beings. This functional understanding transforms how we might approach emotional regulation. Rather than viewing passions as obstacles to rational thought, Descartes presents them as expressions of our embodied rational nature. They represent the soul's natural responses to its situation as united with a body in a complex world. The challenge becomes not eliminating emotions, but ensuring they respond to accurate evaluations of our circumstances. When our judgments about what benefits or harms us are correct, our emotional responses serve us well. When our evaluations are mistaken, our passions may lead us astray. The passions thus reveal both the complexity and the unity of human nature. They demonstrate that we are neither pure minds accidentally trapped in bodies, nor sophisticated machines lacking genuine consciousness. We are substantial unions, where mental and physical aspects create new forms of experience impossible in either realm alone. Understanding this nature becomes essential for achieving the kind of life worthy of rational beings who are also irreducibly embodied. The human soul possesses a remarkable capacity that distinguishes it from all other created beings: the power to govern its own emotional life through reason and will. Descartes reveals that whilst we cannot directly control our passions, as we might move our limbs or direct our thoughts, we can exercise profound influence over them through understanding and redirected attention. The passions arise automatically from our embodied nature, flooding the soul with movements that seem to overwhelm rational deliberation. Yet within this apparent helplessness lies a deeper freedom. As Descartes declares, the will is so free in its nature that it can never be constrained. Even when some passion moves us to will something, the will remains free to consent to or resist this movement. This freedom creates both opportunity and responsibility. We cannot excuse ourselves by claiming that emotions simply happen to us beyond all rational influence. Neither can we demand of ourselves the impossible task of feeling only what reason prescribes. The soul must work with its embodied nature, not against it, finding ways to channel and redirect the animal spirits that carry emotional force throughout the body. Descartes develops a sophisticated method for this emotional regulation that operates through intellectual understanding rather than brute suppression. When excessive fear paralyzes judgment, we can systematically redirect attention toward reasons for courage, allowing the animal spirits to flow along new pathways. When inappropriate anger clouds our perception, we can focus on understanding the true causes of our frustration, rather than feeding the flames of blame and resentment. This redirection requires genuine intellectual work, not mere wishful thinking. We must understand why certain objects trigger specific passions, how our past experiences shape present reactions, and what alternative interpretations might dissolve the grip of destructive emotions. The key insight is that passions follow judgment. Change the judgment, and you change the passion. This principle underlies Descartes' confident assertion that there is no soul so weak that it cannot, if well directed, acquire an absolute power over its passions. The power is absolute not because we can eliminate all unwanted feelings, but because we can always redirect our attention and reshape our understanding. Even in the grip of the strongest passion, the will retains its essential freedom to consent or resist, to feed the emotion or starve it of the attention it requires. This regulation reveals the possibility of a distinctive human excellence, the generous person who has achieved proper self-esteem through understanding what truly belongs to human nature. Descartes defines this generosity with precision. True generosity, which causes a man to esteem himself as highly as he legitimately can, consists only in the fact that he understands that nothing truly belongs to him but this freedom to dispose his volitions. Here lies the foundation of stable self-respect that cannot be shaken by external fortune. The generous person neither inflates their worth through pride in natural talents, inherited wealth, or social position, nor deflates it through false humility about their rational capacities. They recognize that intelligence, beauty, strength, and social status are gifts of nature and circumstance, not achievements of the will. Yet they also recognize that the freedom to direct their volitions toward truth and goodness belongs essentially to their nature as rational beings. This freedom cannot be taken away by misfortune, illness, or social disgrace. It cannot be increased by success or diminished by failure. It simply is, as long as reason remains intact. This understanding transforms the entire landscape of human emotion. Envy dissolves when we realize that others' natural advantages don't diminish our essential worth. Despair loses its grip when we understand that our fundamental dignity remains untouched by external setbacks. Pride becomes impossible when we recognize that our genuine achievements flow from a freedom that was given, not earned. The generous person experiences the full range of human emotions, but is not enslaved by them, because their deepest self-understanding rests on something that fortune cannot touch. This approach draws deeply from Stoic wisdom, whilst transforming it through Cartesian insights about the mind-body union. Like the Stoics, Descartes directs attention toward what lies within our control, rather than external circumstances that fortune determines. We cannot control whether we fall ill, whether others appreciate our efforts. We can control our judgments about these events and our responses to them. This dichotomy of control promises both inner freedom and practical effectiveness, since we stop wasting energy on impossible tasks and focus it where genuine influence is possible. Yet Descartes parts company with the Stoics in crucial ways. He does not regard emotions as diseases of the soul or obstacles to wisdom. The passions are natural and valuable expressions of our embodied nature, providing essential information about our environment and motivating appropriate action. The goal is not to eliminate passion, but to ensure that reason guides its expression. This creates a more humane and psychologically realistic approach to emotional regulation, one that works with human nature rather than against it. The human will stands as the crown of Descartes' philosophical anthropology, the faculty that elevates us above the mechanical realm and makes us genuinely responsible agents. Where the understanding presents ideas clearly or obscurely, and where the body moves according to physical necessity, the will possesses an absolute freedom to affirm or deny, pursue or avoid. This capacity for choice, unlimited in its scope, though sometimes misdirected in its application, constitutes the very source of human dignity and moral responsibility. It is only the will, or freedom of choice, which one experience within me to be so great that the idea of any greater faculty is beyond my grasp. Descartes declares in the fourth meditation, so much so that it is above all in virtue of the will that one understand myself to bear in some way the image of God. This remarkable claim positions human worth not in natural talents, social position, or external achievements, but precisely in our capacity for rational choice. The peasant and the prince possess equally infinite wills, equally capable of affirming truth and pursuing genuine good. This freedom creates genuine moral responsibility because our actions flow from authentic choice rather than mechanical necessity. Yet freedom without direction leads to error and misery. Cartesian virtue emerges from the proper coordination of will with understanding, acting according to right reason whilst maintaining control over the passions rather than being controlled by them. This creates a demanding but achievable ethical standard. Virtue requires both intellectual clarity about what is truly good and volitional strength to choose the good even when passions pull in contrary directions. The virtuous person has developed the habit of pausing before important decisions, examining the understanding's deliverances carefully, and then choosing resolutely based on the clearest available reasons. This approach makes ethics simultaneously intellectually rigorous and practically attainable. We need not rely on mysterious moral intuitions or inherited traditions, but can apply the same methodical approach that succeeds in mathematics and natural philosophy. The person who understands that lasting satisfaction comes from rational choice rather than sensual pleasure, who recognizes that reputation depends on others, whilst virtue depends entirely on oneself, possesses knowledge that directly guides action. Such understanding, combined with the disciplined practice of choosing according to reason, gradually transforms character itself. The highest good flows naturally from this analysis. The satisfaction that accompanies virtuous action and the consciousness of living according to our rational nature. One believed that the highest felicity of man depends on the right use of reason. Descartes writes to Chanut, locating human happiness not in external rewards or pleasures, but in the proper exercise of our essential faculty. This creates a form of contentment that depends entirely on what lies within our control, our own rational choices, rather than on fortune, other people's opinions, or external circumstances. This satisfaction proves both more reliable than pleasure-based happiness and more worthy of rational beings. Pleasures depend on external conditions that may change without warning. The satisfaction of virtuous choice depends only on our continued commitment to reason. Moreover, this happiness expresses our essential nature as thinking substances rather than treating us as sophisticated animals seeking gratification. The person who chooses truth over comfortable illusion, justice over profitable injustice, experiences a contentment that flows from acting in accordance with what they most fundamentally are. But how does this ethical vision translate into practical guidance for actual living? Descartes develops a provisional morality that balances intellectual humility with practical decisiveness. Recognizing that philosophical certainty develops slowly whilst life demands immediate decisions, he advocates acting resolutely on the best available reasons rather than remaining paralyzed by doubt. This requires accepting social customs when they don't conflict with reason, maintaining firm resolution in action even when knowledge remains incomplete, and continuously pursuing truth whilst fulfilling present obligations. The moral maxims from the Discourse on Method exemplify this practical wisdom. Obeying the laws and customs of one's country whilst holding religious beliefs with appropriate conviction, maintaining firmness and resolution in action, following even doubtful opinions consistently once adopted for practical purposes, seeking to change one's desires rather than the world when external circumstances prove intractable, and dedicating oneself to the cultivation of reason and the pursuit of truth as the highest calling of human life. This provisional morality creates space for philosophical development whilst ensuring that ethical living continues during intellectual uncertainty. The person following these maxims acts decisively without claiming absolute certainty and pursues the highest human good, the right use of reason. whilst fulfilling immediate, practical obligations. Part 8. The method applied. Science and knowledge. Descartes envisioned human knowledge not as scattered fragments of information, but as a single organic system with the coherence and beauty of a living tree. In the preface to his Principles of Philosophy, he declares, "The whole of philosophy is like a tree. The roots are metaphysics, the trunk is physics." This metaphor reveals something profound about the nature of understanding itself. Knowledge forms an integrated whole where each part depends upon and supports the others, rather than a mere collection of separate subjects with different methods and standards. The roots run deep into fundamental questions about God, mind, and matter, those metaphysical principles that ground everything else. Without secure foundations about what exists and how we can know it, the entire structure remains unstable. The trunk represents physics, our understanding of material nature and its laws, drawing nourishment from metaphysical certainties, whilst supporting the practical sciences above. The fruit-bearing branches, medicine, mechanics, ethics, emerge naturally from this systematic foundation, producing the practical benefits that make knowledge valuable for human life. This organic unity becomes possible through the universal application of rational method. The same analytical approach that achieves certainty in mathematics must work everywhere truth is attainable, is less than #0, 5# is greater than. Those 4 rules from the discourse: accept only clear and distinct ideas, divide complex problems into manageable parts, order thoughts systematically from simple to complex, make complete enumerations to ensure nothing is overlooked, apply equally to metaphysics, natural philosophy, medicine, and ethics. Descartes recognized that those long chains of perfectly simple and easy reasonings, by means of which geometers are accustomed to carry out their most difficult demonstrations, had led me to fancy that everything that can fall under human knowledge forms a similar chain. The mathematical ideal transforms every field of inquiry. All genuine knowledge should achieve the certainty and clarity of geometric demonstration, rather than settling for probable opinion or traditional authority. Instead of accepting received wisdom or arguing from established texts, each science must build systematically from self-evident principles through clear reasoning to certain conclusions. This methodical approach promises to eliminate the contradictions and uncertainties that plague traditional learning by subjecting every claim to the same rigorous standards that make mathematics reliable. Such unity enables unprecedented mastery over nature and human life by replacing uncertain opinion with systematic knowledge. When knowledge forms an integrated whole, progress in any area strengthens the entire structure. Advances in physics improve medicine. Better understanding of human nature refines ethics. Clearer metaphysical principles support more reliable natural philosophy. Descartes promised that proper method would make humans masters and possessors of nature, which is without doubt the first good and the foundation of all other goods in this life. This vision of unified knowledge through methodical doubt and systematic reasoning would revolutionize natural philosophy itself, transforming how we understand the material world and our place within it. Descartes revolutionizes natural philosophy by replacing the mysterious explanations of scholastic tradition with the transparent clarity of mechanical demonstration. Where previous thinkers appealed to substantial forms, final causes, and occult qualities, concepts that explained nothing whilst appearing to explain everything, Cartesian method demands that every natural phenomenon submit to the clear and distinct ideas of extension, motion, and their mathematical relationships. As Descartes declares in the Principles, one do not accept or desire any other principle in physics than in geometry or abstract mathematics, because all the phenomena of nature may be explained by their means. This bold assertion eliminates at a stroke the entire apparatus of mysterious explanatory concepts that had dominated natural philosophy for centuries. No longer can we appeal to a stone's natural tendency to fall earthward, or invoke substantial forms to explain why fire rises whilst water flows downward. Such explanations satisfy no rational mind because they merely rename the phenomena they purport to explain. When we ask why fire rises, being told it possesses a form of lightness tells us nothing we did not already know. Descartes insists that genuine explanation must reduce all natural processes to the mechanical interactions of extended substances, matter in motion, governed by precise mathematical laws that reason can grasp completely. This methodical revolution transforms every domain of natural investigation. Planetary motion becomes celestial mechanics, with orbital paths analyzed through geometric principles, rather than appeals to celestial intelligences guiding the spheres. Animal behavior reduces to complex hydraulics, with bodily functions explained through mechanical analysis of circulation, respiration, and nervous transmission rather than mysterious vital spirits. Weather patterns become fluid dynamics, with atmospheric phenomena understood through mathematical study of pressure, temperature, and motion rather than the whims of elemental forces. Human physiology itself becomes anatomical engineering, with the heart functioning as a pump, the lungs as bellows, and the nervous system as an intricate network of mechanical transmission. Descartes applies this mechanical analysis with systematic precision across all natural phenomena. The circulation of blood follows hydraulic principles, with the heart's muscular contractions driving fluid through a closed system of vessels according to laws of pressure and resistance. The formation of rainbows emerges from the geometric analysis of light refraction through water droplets, each color appearing at precisely calculable angles. Magnetic attraction operates through invisible mechanical interactions of subtle matter, with magnetic fields explained through the circulation of screw-shaped particles that fit into corresponding pores in iron. Even the operation of the nervous system reduces to mechanical transmission, with animal spirits flowing through hollow tubes to activate muscles through purely physical pressure. This unified mechanical approach eliminates the arbitrary distinctions that had fragmented previous natural philosophy into separate domains, requiring different explanatory principles. No longer do we need separate physics for terrestrial versus celestial phenomena, distinct principles for living versus non-living matter, or different explanations for natural versus artificial processes. The same mechanical laws that govern the collision of billiard balls also govern the motion of planets, the circulation of blood. Nature operates as a vast machine, comprehensible through the same mathematical principles we apply to human constructions. The vindication of this revolutionary approach comes not merely through theoretical elegance, but through practical success. Mechanical explanations enable technological mastery over natural phenomena in ways that qualitative approaches never could achieve. When we understand the mechanical causes of natural processes, we can reproduce, modify, and direct them for human benefit. Mathematical understanding of leverage enables the construction of more efficient machines. Mechanical analysis of circulation leads to improved medical treatments. Geometric comprehension of optical phenomena makes possible the design of telescopes and microscopes that extend human perception beyond its natural limits. This practical success proves the superiority of mechanical philosophy through results rather than mere theoretical appeal. The new natural philosophy transforms humans from passive observers of mysterious natural processes into active masters who understand nature's operations sufficiently to work with them toward human goals. We become, in Descartes' memorable phrase, masters and possessors of nature, rather than subjects bewildered by incomprehensible forces. This transformation represents a fundamental shift in the human relationship to the natural world. Rather than accepting natural limitations as inevitable expressions of mysterious essences, we can now understand natural processes as mechanical operations susceptible to rational analysis and practical control. Descartes faces a profound challenge in the aftermath of methodical doubt. Having established the cogito as an unshakable foundation and proven God's existence as the guarantor of clear and distinct perceptions, he must now map the boundaries of what human reason can genuinely know. The method has revealed certain truths, but it has also exposed the vast territories where absolute certainty remains elusive. This creates not a crisis of knowledge, but a sophisticated understanding of knowledge itself, the architecture of human knowledge. For Descartes, operates on multiple levels. At the apex stands certain knowledge, those truths we apprehend through clear and distinct perception with divine guarantee. Here we find the existence and nature of mind as thinking substance, God's existence and perfection, and the essential properties of material substance as extension, figure, and motion. These truths possess the same indubitability as mathematical demonstrations. We know with absolute certainty that mind and body are distinct substances, that God exists as a perfect being, that material objects possess geometric properties. Yet beneath this summit of certainty lies a vast realm of probable knowledge that governs most of human experience. Descartes recognizes that demanding absolute certainty for every belief would paralyze human life entirely. We must make decisions about health, politics, and daily conduct based on probable judgments, whilst continuing to seek certain foundations for theoretical understanding. As he observes in the Discourse on Method, in order to be useful, it is not necessary that our reasons should be true. It is sufficient that they should be probable. This creates a hierarchy rather than a rejection. Specific details about natural processes, historical facts, complex causal chains, the particular configurations of material bodies. These fall short of absolute certainty, whilst remaining sufficiently probable for practical purposes. We cannot know with mathematical certainty that this particular piece of wax will melt at precisely this temperature under these conditions, but we can establish general principles about the behavior of material substances that guide successful prediction and manipulation. Descartes' provisional morality exemplifies this sophisticated approach to probable knowledge. Recognizing that ethical and political questions require immediate practical decisions, whilst their ultimate foundations remain under investigation, he advocates acting decisively on the most probable judgments available. We cannot wait for absolute certainty about the best form of government or the precise nature of virtue before engaging in moral and political life. Instead, we act on well-considered probabilities whilst continuing the search for more certain foundations. This acknowledgement of probability's legitimate role prevents the method from collapsing into paralyzing skepticism. Human reason operates effectively within its proper sphere, whilst recognizing its limitations is less than #0, 5# is greater than. We achieve sufficient truth for human purposes through proper method and sustained effort, even whilst acknowledging that comprehensive divine knowledge remains beyond our reach. As Descartes declares, "My design has never extended beyond trying to reform my own thoughts and to build upon a foundation that is all my own." The recognition of human finitude actually enables more reliable knowledge by preventing overconfidence and encouraging methodical caution. Rather than claiming universal knowledge we cannot possess, we focus on what reason can genuinely establish within its proper boundaries. This intellectual humility, paradoxically, generates greater confidence in reason's achievements. We trust our clear and distinct perceptions precisely because we understand their scope and limitations. Moreover, Descartes envisions knowledge as fundamentally progressive rather than cyclical. Each generation builds upon previous discoveries through proper application of method, making human understanding cumulative. The mathematical innovations of his own era demonstrate this possibility. Algebraic geometry advances beyond classical mathematics, not by rejecting previous achievements, but by extending them through systematic method. Similarly, natural philosophy progresses by establishing reliable principles that future investigators can build upon, rather than perpetually questioning. This optimistic vision of intellectual progress emerges directly from methodical foundations. Because the method provides reliable procedures for distinguishing truth from error, human knowledge can advance systematically, rather than merely accumulating opinions. Future thinkers inherit not just conclusions, but the very tools for extending knowledge further. The mechanical philosophy of nature, grounded in clear mathematical principles, enables genuine discovery rather than endless speculation. The scope of human knowledge thus encompasses both its achievements and its limitations. We attain certain knowledge of fundamental principles whilst acknowledging that detailed applications often remain probable. We act decisively on practical questions whilst continuing theoretical investigation. We recognize our finitude whilst confidently employing reason within its proper sphere. Descartes transformed mathematics by uniting two previously separate realms into a single, powerful method of analysis. His coordinate geometry achieved something revolutionary. It made algebra and geometry into aspects of one mathematical science. By representing geometric figures through algebraic equations and algebraic relationships through geometric curves, Descartes created what he called the true mathematics, a universal method for solving problems that had resisted solution for centuries. The breakthrough lay in recognizing that any geometric problem could be translated into algebraic terms, where systematic calculation replaced the ingenious constructions that had characterized Greek geometry. As Descartes wrote in the Geometry, any problem in geometry can easily be reduced to such terms that a knowledge of the lengths of certain straight lines is sufficient for its construction. This wasn't merely a technical advance. It exemplified how proper method could revolutionize entire domains of knowledge by finding the right way to represent problems. The coordinate system that bears Descartes' name emerged from this insight. By establishing perpendicular axes and representing points through numerical coordinates, he created a bridge between the concrete world of spatial relationships and the abstract realm of numerical calculation. A circle became not just a curved line but an equation. X squared plus y squared equals r squared. This transformation made possible systematic solutions to problems of tangents, areas, and curve properties that had challenged mathematicians since antiquity. This mathematical innovation demonstrated the power of what Descartes called method, the systematic approach to any domain where knowledge is possible. In the Discourse on Method, he codified this approach into 4 fundamental rules that had guided his mathematical discoveries and could guide inquiry in any field. First, accept nothing as true that is not evidently so. Avoid prejudice and hasty judgment by admitting only ideas that present themselves so clearly and distinctly to the mind that there is no occasion to doubt them. Second, divide each problem into as many parts as necessary for its solution. Analyze complex issues into their simple elements. Third, conduct thoughts in order, beginning with the simplest objects and ascending gradually to knowledge of the most complex. Build systematically, from what is known to what is unknown. Fourth, Make complete enumerations and general reviews to ensure nothing relevant has been overlooked. These rules weren't abstract principles, but practical procedures that Descartes had tested in mathematical research. They guided the systematic doubt that led to the Cogito, the analysis of material substance that revealed extension as its essence, and the proofs of God's existence that validated reason itself. The same methodical approach that enabled him to solve geometric problems through algebraic calculation could be applied to questions of knowledge, reality, and human nature. Descartes envisioned what he called a universal mathesis, a perfect science where every genuine insight would achieve the clarity, certainty, and systematic connection that characterized geometric demonstration. This didn't mean reducing everything to numbers, but rather applying the same rigorous standards of evidence and systematic method that made mathematics reliable. Just as coordinate geometry revealed the underlying mathematical relationships within spatial figures, proper method could reveal the rational structure underlying all domains of knowledge. The mathematical ideal guided Descartes' analysis of mind through clear conceptual distinctions between thought and extension, his study of matter through geometric analysis of motion and collision, his proofs of God's existence through rigorous demonstration, and his approach to ethics through rational analysis of human nature and the good life. In each case, the goal was to achieve the same kind of systematic understanding that mathematics provided, knowledge that was certain, connected, and practically useful. The practical success of Cartesian method validated this approach through its fruits. The systematic procedure that began with methodical doubt and proceeded through clear analysis enabled unprecedented understanding of natural processes and development of practical applications. Better medicine emerged from understanding the body as a machine governed by mechanical laws. More reliable navigation resulted from mathematical analysis of celestial motions. Improved agriculture followed from systematic study of plant growth and soil conditions. More effective machines were designed through precise analysis of force, motion, and mechanical advantage. This practical success demonstrated that the method worked, not just in providing theoretical satisfaction, but in delivering real improvements in human life. The same analytical approach that solved mathematical problems could unlock the secrets of nature and enhance human power over the material world. Descartes had discovered not just a new way of doing mathematics, but a new way of thinking that could transform human understanding and capability across every domain where rational inquiry was possible. Part 9. The Cartesian Revolution and its Implications. Cartesian philosophy reveals humans as unprecedented beings in the cosmic order, thinking substances united to mechanical bodies, creatures who are neither pure spirits nor mere machines. Descartes discovers that we occupy a unique position between angels and animals, possessing both the rational capacities of immaterial minds and the physical limitations of material bodies. This dual nature creates an entirely new understanding of what it means to be human, one that explains both our extraordinary ability to achieve certain knowledge and our persistent vulnerability to error and confusion. The human being emerges from Cartesian analysis as a composite creature of remarkable complexity. We are not simply souls temporarily imprisoned in bodies, as Platonic tradition suggested, nor are we merely sophisticated animals, as materialist philosophy would claim. Instead, Descartes reveals that the human person represents a genuine unity of two distinct substances. As he puts it, one am not only lodged in my body as a pilot in a vessel, but one am very closely united to it, and so to speak, so intermingled with it, that one seem to compose with it one whole. This intimate union explains why we experience hunger, thirst, and pain not as external signals but as immediate aspects of our being. while simultaneously possessing the capacity to step back from these experiences through rational reflection. This dual nature elevates reason as the defining human capacity. What makes us distinctly human is not our physical strength, which many animals exceed, nor our sensory acuity, which various creatures surpass, nor even our emotional intensity, which we share with other sentient beings. Rather, our humanity lies in our ability to think clearly, doubt methodically, and achieve certain knowledge through proper intellectual method. The rational soul distinguishes us from all other material creatures precisely because it can transcend the mechanical operations of the body to grasp universal truths and necessary connections. This discovery carries profound democratic implications. Since every human being possesses reason as their essential nature, intellectual excellence becomes accessible to anyone willing to think systematically, rather than being limited to those with special talents or social privileges. Descartes expresses remarkable confidence in universal rational capacity. Good sense is the most evenly distributed thing in the world. The difference between intellectual achievement and failure lies not in natural endowment but in method and application. Anyone can achieve reliable knowledge if they follow proper intellectual procedures, doubt systematically, and build conclusions on indubitable foundations. The democratization of knowledge transforms the relationship between individual and tradition. Instead of deferring to established authorities or accepting inherited wisdom passively, each person must retrace the philosophical journey from doubt to certainty personally. No external authority, however venerable, can substitute for the individual's own rational investigation. Descartes acknowledges this intellectual equality explicitly. One have never presumed my mind to be in any way more perfect than that of the ordinary man. The capacity for truth lies within every human being, waiting to be developed through proper intellectual discipline. This intellectual democratization creates both extraordinary opportunity and demanding responsibility. Each individual must personally undertake the philosophical journey from universal doubt to certain knowledge. No one can think for another person, making intellectual independence both empowering and isolating. Traditional authorities can no longer provide ready-made answers to fundamental questions about existence, knowledge, and reality. Every person must become their own philosopher, conducting their own methodical investigation of truth. The burden of intellectual autonomy introduces new forms of responsibility and potential isolation into human experience. When established customs and inherited authorities lose their automatic authority, individuals face the demanding task of thinking through fundamental questions independently. This intellectual freedom anticipates modern concerns about individual responsibility in democratic societies, where each person must develop critical thinking capacities rather than simply following established traditions. The Cartesian human being becomes responsible for their own intellectual development in ways that previous philosophical traditions never demanded. This new understanding of human nature as rational substance united to mechanical body prepares us to explore how this distinctive position connects to the mechanical understanding of the natural world that Cartesian philosophy develops. Descartes transforms nature from a living, purposive whole into a vast mathematical machine. Where medieval and Renaissance thinkers saw a cosmos filled with inherent purposes, meaningful relationships, and natural tendencies toward particular ends, Cartesian philosophy presents nature as pure mechanism. Every natural event results from prior material causes operating according to universal mathematical laws. The falling stone seeks no natural place. It simply obeys geometric principles of motion. The growing plant pursues no inherent goal. Its development follows mechanical processes as predictable as clockwork. This mechanization eliminates teleological explanation entirely. Previous natural philosophy asked why things happen, seeking purposes and meanings embedded in natural processes themselves. Cartesian science asks only how things happen, tracing efficient causes through mathematical relationships. As Descartes declares, "One, do not recognize any difference between the machines made by craftsmen and the various bodies that nature alone composes. The human heart operates like a mechanical pump. Animal behavior follows stimulus-response patterns, and celestial motions conform to the same geometric principles governing terrestrial mechanics." This mechanical vision makes nature completely transparent to mathematical analysis. Where earlier thinkers encountered mystery, hidden virtues, and irreducible complexity in natural phenomena, Cartesian philosophy finds universal mathematical principles operating with perfect consistency. The same geometric relationships that describe planetary orbits explain projectile motion, fluid dynamics, and optical phenomena. Nature becomes entirely intelligible through quantitative measurement and mathematical reasoning. Yet this intellectual triumph creates a profound transformation in humanity's relationship to the natural world. Mind becomes spectator and potential master of mechanical nature rather than participant in a meaningful cosmic order. Instead of finding our place within a purposive natural hierarchy that reflects divine wisdom and provides inherent guidance for human life, we confront a mechanical system completely indifferent to human purposes, values, and meanings. This creates both unprecedented intellectual clarity and potential existential alienation. Mathematical natural philosophy enables precise prediction and technological control impossible under teleological frameworks. We can calculate planetary positions centuries in advance, design machines that amplify human power dramatically, and develop medical techniques based on mechanical understanding of bodily processes. Nature's mechanical character makes it completely manipulable through rational analysis. But mechanical nature no longer reflects human purposes or provides inherent meaning for human existence. The medieval cosmos offered humanity a meaningful place within a purposive order directed toward divine ends. Cartesian nature offers no such comfort. We must impose our purposes on a mechanical system that operates according to mathematical necessity, not moral significance or human needs. This transforms the fundamental human situation. Instead of discovering our proper role within a meaningful natural order, we must create meaning through rational mastery of mechanical processes. Human dignity depends not on fitting harmoniously into cosmic purposes, but on transcending natural limitations through scientific understanding and technological control. The mechanical worldview thus presents both unprecedented promise and potential peril. It enables dramatic improvements in human life through scientific medicine, more reliable agriculture, and increasingly sophisticated technology. Mechanical understanding of natural processes allows systematic intervention that can reduce suffering, extend life, and expand human capabilities beyond anything previous civilizations imagined possible. Yet mechanization potentially undermines the sense that human life fits meaningfully into the larger order of reality. If nature operates purely through mathematical necessity, human purposes and values appear arbitrary additions to a fundamentally purposeless system. The mechanical worldview that enables scientific mastery may simultaneously create the characteristically modern tension between technological power and existential meaning. Cartesian philosophy thus establishes the intellectual foundation for both the scientific revolution's achievements and the Enlightenment's confidence in rational progress. The mechanical worldview and mathematical method provide the metaphysical framework that will enable Newton's mathematical physics, support empirical investigation of natural phenomena, and justify the general modern conviction that reason can solve human problems through understanding and controlling natural processes. This foundation proves remarkably durable and productive. Modern science, technology, and rational social planning all depend on assumptions about nature's mechanical character and mathematics' universal applicability that Descartes articulates with unprecedented clarity and systematic rigor. Descartes solved certain philosophical problems with unprecedented clarity, yet in doing so, he created new questions that continue to define modern philosophy. His systematic approach transformed ancient puzzles into precise formulations that subsequent thinkers could neither ignore nor easily resolve. The very success of Cartesian analysis opened intellectual territories that remain contested today. The mind-body problem stands as perhaps the most enduring legacy of Cartesian philosophy. By establishing the complete distinction between mental and physical substance, Descartes formulated with crystalline precision what becomes the central challenge for all subsequent philosophy. How can consciousness emerge from or interact with matter if they represent fundamentally different kinds of being? This question transforms every aspect of philosophical inquiry. If mind and body are truly distinct substances, their apparent interaction in human experience becomes deeply mysterious. When one decides to raise my hand and my hand rises, what exactly occurs at the boundary between mental intention and physical movement? Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia grasped this difficulty immediately, pressing Descartes relentlessly on the interaction problem. How can the soul of man, being only a thinking substance, determine the bodily spirits to produce voluntary actions? Her questioning revealed that Cartesian dualism, whilst solving certain problems about the nature of mind, creates an explanatory gap that proves extraordinarily difficult to bridge. Every major philosophical position that follows represents an attempt to resolve this Cartesian puzzle. Materialism reduces mind to complex matter. Idealism reduces matter to mental phenomena. Parallelism denies genuine interaction whilst preserving both substances, and various forms of monism reject the ultimate distinction altogether. The epistemological implications prove equally persistent. The Cogito provides unshakable foundation by grounding certainty in the immediate awareness of consciousness, yet this very strategy creates the characteristically modern problem of moving from inner certainty to knowledge of the external world. Starting philosophy with consciousness as the one indubitable fact generates what becomes known as the problem of the external world. If we begin with the privacy of our own mental states as the only certain starting point, how do we establish that anything exists beyond consciousness itself? This Cartesian legacy influences centuries of philosophical development. Empiricists like Locke and Hume struggle with deriving knowledge of external objects from the ideas present to consciousness. Berkeley concludes that material substance is unnecessary, reducing physical objects to collections of ideas in minds. Kant attempts to preserve both subjective certainty and objective knowledge by arguing that the conditions making experience possible also make knowledge of objects possible. Contemporary philosophy continues wrestling with these issues in debates about consciousness, qualia, and external world skepticism. The phenomenological tradition takes the Cartesian starting point seriously, whilst questioning whether consciousness can be understood in isolation from its intentional structure. The problem of bridging subjective experience and objective reality remains central to philosophy of mind, epistemology, and cognitive science. The metaphysical questions raised by Cartesian philosophy extend beyond mind-body dualism to fundamental issues about the nature of reality itself. What constitutes genuine substance? Descartes argues that substance is that which requires nothing else for its existence, leading to the conclusion that, strictly speaking, only God is truly substantial. Created substances depend on divine conservation for their continued existence. This raises profound questions about the relationship between finite and infinite being, the nature of causation, and the ultimate structure of reality. These metaphysical puzzles generate the great systematic philosophies that follow. Spinoza resolves the interaction problem by arguing for substance monism. There is only one substance, which is both mental and physical, under different aspects. Leibniz develops monadology, arguing that reality consists of simple substances that do not interact, but appear to do so through pre-established harmony. Contemporary philosophy continues engaging these Cartesian themes in debates about emergence, reduction, levels of description, and the relationship between consciousness and physical processes. The questions Descartes formulated with such precision remain live issues in philosophy of mind, metaphysics, and philosophy of science. Perhaps most significantly, Cartesian philosophy creates characteristically modern ethical challenges. By subjecting traditional authorities to systematic doubt and establishing reason as the primary guide to truth, Descartes opens questions about moral foundation that persist today. If nature operates according to mechanical laws and traditional sources of moral guidance prove questionable under methodical doubt, what grounds ethical obligation? How do rational beings live well in a universe that scientific investigation reveals as potentially indifferent to human purposes and values? This tension between scientific understanding and ethical meaning becomes central to modern philosophy. Part 10. Conclusion. The architecture of Cartesian philosophy reveals itself as a masterpiece of systematic thinking, where each element necessarily supports every other in creating a complete worldview grounded in reason rather than tradition, authority, or mere opinion. From the radical doubt that strips away all uncertain beliefs through to the mathematical understanding of nature, Descartes constructs a philosophical system of unprecedented coherence. Methodical doubt leads inevitably to the Cogito, which establishes the nature of mind as thinking substance. The Cogito requires God's existence to validate the reliability of reason itself. God's perfection guarantees that clear and distinct perceptions correspond to reality. Validated reason reveals the nature of material substance as pure extension. Mind-body dualism explains human nature as the union of two distinct substances. Proper method enables systematic knowledge of reality across all domains. As Descartes himself declared, in order to have solid foundations, you must dig down deep and throw out all the sand and mud until you reach rock or clay. This architectural vision creates philosophical coherence, where every major doctrine supports and is supported by every other, forming an integrated system that transforms human understanding. This systematic approach yields Descartes' ultimate vision of human nature and possibility. Humans emerge as rational beings capable of certain knowledge, existing as thinking substances in a mechanical universe, guided by reason toward truth and virtue, rather than by custom, passion, or external authority. This creates a revolutionary understanding of human dignity based on rational capacity, human responsibility based on free will, and human possibility based on methodical thinking. Descartes expresses confidence that proper use of reason can make us masters and possessors of nature whilst living virtuously according to rational principles. His vision integrates theoretical understanding through metaphysics and natural philosophy with practical wisdom through ethics and the regulation of passions. The Cartesian human being achieves genuine autonomy through rational self-governance, scientific knowledge through mathematical method, and moral virtue through clear understanding of good and evil. The revolutionary legacy of Cartesian philosophy continues to shape contemporary thought across multiple domains. Descartes establishes consciousness as the starting point of philosophy, creating the foundation for modern philosophy of mind and epistemology. His mathematical ideal for all knowledge underlies the scientific revolution and continues to influence philosophy of science. The mechanical understanding of nature that emerges from his natural philosophy shapes modern physics, biology, and technology. The Cogito remains a touchstone for contemporary discussions of self-knowledge and personal identity. The mind-body problem continues to generate philosophical and scientific research into consciousness, artificial intelligence, and neuroscience. Even philosophers who reject Cartesian conclusions often accept Cartesian formulations of the problems they address. The systematic doubt that initiates Cartesian philosophy becomes a permanent feature of critical thinking, whilst the ideal of mathematical certainty continues to influence scientific method and philosophical argumentation. Perhaps most profoundly, Cartesian philosophy reveals that the human quest for absolute certainty discloses both the power and limits of human reason. Descartes demonstrates that we can achieve genuine knowledge whilst remaining finite beings in an infinite reality. Systematic doubt, rather than destroying knowledge, reveals knowledge more certain than any previous philosophy achieved. Yet this knowledge remains distinctively human rather than divine in its scope and method. Descartes acknowledges that my nature is very weak and limited, whereas the nature of God is immense, incomprehensible, and infinite. This combination of rational confidence and intellectual humility creates a distinctively modern philosophical sensibility that acknowledges both human dignity through reason and human finitude through embodiment. The Cartesian revolution establishes that humans can achieve certain knowledge of their own existence, clear understanding of mathematical and logical truths, and reliable knowledge of the natural world, whilst recognizing the limits imposed by finite understanding and bodily existence. This vision of human reason as both powerful and limited, both capable of genuine knowledge and constrained by finite perspective, makes Cartesian philosophy a permanent contribution to human self-understanding that continues to illuminate the possibilities and responsibilities of rational beings in a mathematical universe.